Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was Minato's clone. For Namake's Minato, Yandame Hokage, the day started out like any other. But then Jiraiya walked into his office with a teen that could have been Minato's clone and that bore the name of his vanished lover. His day just got very, very interesting. Find out here. Welcome aboard. Chapter 1. Arrival. Soft shafts of morning sunlight illuminated the forest. Pieces of blue sky could be seen through the boughs of the tall pines. Two young men walked the same small path between the trees, moving towards each other. One wore his black hair swept back in a spiky style, except for some bangs that hung down to his chin, framing his face. The other had golden hair, like the sunlight surrounding them. His hair was spiky too, but his spikes were unruly and stuck out all over. He wore a black headband to keep them out of his face, the ends trailing down past his shoulders. One had black eyes, so dark the pupils disappeared in them. They were blank, like still pools where you could not see past the surface and so could not be sure where the bottom was. The other had sky blue eyes, perfectly clear and endless. These pools were easy to see into, but again you couldn't be sure where the bottom was, because there was no bottom. The dark-haired one had pale skin and a blank expression on his slim, angular features. He wore a finely made, dark blue yukata with the symbol of his family, a red and white fan, at the shoulders. He also wore a dark blue headband with a metal plate on his forehead. A stylized leaf with a swirl in the middle was etched into it. A katana hung at his left side. He moved along the path gracefully and calmly, barely disturbing the leaves of the bushes on either side. The blonde had tan skin, at least, it was tan compared to the pale one, and two dark marks on each cheek that resembled whiskers. He was grinning and chewing on a piece of dried foxtail grass. The bushy end of the grass bounced up and down with the animated steps he took. He was wearing a less finely made black and orange yukata, tied with a simple black belt. A red swirl ending in a leaping flame was emblazoned on the back. He also had a katana at his left side and his right arm was out of his sleeve, crossed in front of him, the hand resting lightly on the hilt, the fingers tapping out a beat that matched his footfalls. They came closer, and passed each other as if neither had seen the other. But, after exactly 2 steps, each paused. Each knew the other had stopped too. Neither turned their head. Neither changed their expression. If anything, the blonde's grin grew wider and the black-haired boy's face became more still. If such a thing were even possible. The dark teen silently laid a hand on the sheath of his katana and slid the blade out slightly with his thumb. The blonde's fingers went from tapping on the handle of his sword to gripping it firmly, ready to draw it in an instant. The forest was quiet. The air was heavy. Any moment now. Suddenly, the tension snapped, but not in the way the two had expected. A bright yellow frog hopped onto a stone marker next to the path, between the two. It croaked, and the spell was broken. Each young man relaxed taut muscles. The blonde laughed, a loud, ringing sound, and the dark one smirked, but neither turned. They simply resumed their journeys. The frog looked between the retreating figures, then hopped off the stone after the blonde. Out of sight of the other, the blonde stopped and looked behind him at the frog. "Well, come on," he said, and the frog took a mighty leap to land on his head. "I expect Sensei wants me back?" The frog said nothing, but then, he didn't have to. The black-haired teen continued at his slow pace down the path, deep in thought. What was that? He hadn't thought much of the blonde with his goofy grin until they had passed each other. At that moment, when they had been closest, shoulders almost touching, he had felt something. He wasn't really sure what it was. It was familiar somehow, yet also utterly alien. A whisper in the back of his mind. A tingle across his skin. A fire sparking to life in the pit of his stomach. The air around him had suddenly felt heavy, thick. It had pressed on his shoulders and made it hard to breathe. He had taken 2 more steps and stopped. He knew the blonde had stopped too. The feeling hadn't gone away. The blonde had made no move, had not been threatening in any way. But he knew with absolute certainty, that the blonde was dangerous. Despite his appearance to the contrary. And it was better to be cautious. So, he had loosened his katana in the sheath and waited. But the tension had been eased by a frog of all things. And the feeling had disappeared like it had never been in the first place. The blonde had laughed and it was so incongruous with the feeling of danger just moments before, the dark teen had to smirk. It was the closest he ever came to a smile. He found himself smirking now, just thinking about it. That laugh. He shook himself. What was he thinking? He most likely would never see the strange teen again. And if he did, he wasn't entirely certain that laughing is what he would be doing. He set his features into an expressionless mask and continued on his way. The blonde arrived back at the camp he had stayed in the night before with his sensei. The man was waiting beneath a tree, his back resting against the trunk. His white hair was just as spiky and unruly as the blonde's, except the man's was much longer, falling in a ponytail almost to his knees. He kept it off his face with a wide metal band that red oil. He had dark eyes and 2 red marks extending from them down his cheeks to his jawline. He wore dark green pants and a matching Yawagi shirt belted at his waist. Over that he wore a dark red sleeveless coat with 2 yellow circles at the shoulders. When standing, he was tall over 6 feet, not counting the extra height his wooden clogs gave him, and broad-shouldered. Now, he was sitting hunched over his notebook, scribbling something. His pack was waiting by his side. The blonde rolled his eyes at the man. His sensei was incredibly powerful and skilled in the ninja arts. He lived his life by a strict code: loyalty, duty, courage, and honor. All things the teen admired. But, those damn books of his, and the research he conducted to write them. Oi! Arosenin, he called, stopping in front of the man. You wanted me? He pointed to the frog on top of his head. The man, Jiraiya, didn't even look up. It's time to go, Naruto, he said. Naruto had packed his bag before he had left the camp that morning, so it was easy enough to grab it and head out, before he had time to really think about where they were going and what was waiting for him at the end of their journey. Before he completely lost his nerve, he walked obediently behind his sensei, quiet as he tried, and failed to quell his emotions. Being quiet and obedient was not his usual state, but today was a special day. He had been both eagerly awaiting and dreading this day for all of his almost 16 years. Now that it was here, he didn't know what to think or how to feel. And meeting that person earlier, he hoped it was a good sign. Jiraiya spoke up. You're awfully quiet today. Naruto moved up next to his teacher. I have a lot on my mind, he replied. Something happen on your walk? His sensei asked. Naruto often went on walks, as he called them. Jiraiya knew he did more than take a leisurely stroll through the forest, but he'd never been able to discover what. Naruto never volunteered information about them and resisted all Jiraiya's attempts to pry. Naruto glanced at the man next to him, then looked back at the road, a small pout on his face. He knew the frog hadn't spoken to the toad sage before he had been thanked and dismissed, but maybe the man did have some sort of telepathic link with his summons. I met the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, he said reluctantly. He wasn't sure why exactly he was reluctant to mention it to Jiraiya. Nothing had happened, they hadn't even introduced themselves. And if he became a ninja of Konoha, surely, they would meet eventually anyway? Of course, they would, he would make sure of it. This person was half the reason he wanted to go to Konoha in the first place. Maybe that desire was the source of his unease. After all, Jiraiya didn't know anything about that. His sensei's voice broke him out of his thoughts. Really? How did you know it was him? Naruto slid his gaze over to the big man, looking at him out of the corner of his eyes in disbelief. What kind of a stupid question was that? Of course, he knew. Jiraiya had the grace to look sheepish. Okay, stupid question. Sorry, he said. Naruto grinned. It's okay, Arosenin, he said. We just passed each other on the path. We didn't even speak. He left out the part about almost fighting. I figured we'd be introduced eventually. The grin disappeared. That is, if... He trailed off. This was the other thing he was pensive about. If you are accepted into the village? The toad sage finished for him. Naruto only nodded, keeping his eyes down. Jiraiya smiled again. You will be. There is no doubt in my mind. Don't forget, the Hokage was my student too, so I know him very well. Naruto nodded again, but this time he looked up, a determined expression on his face. I have to be. I will be no use to my father if I am not welcome in his village. Jiraiya's smile deepened at his tone. Are you sure you don't want a little information about him? Just so you are a little prepared? He asked, not for the first time. Naruto only shook his head, also not for the first time. No. He is getting no warning, so I will have none either. Jiraiya sighed. When Naruto had first met the Toad Sage, 7 years ago, the big man had known in an instant who his father was. He had told Naruto they looked just alike. But Naruto refused any further information and he had sworn Jiraiya to secrecy as well. He would introduce himself to his father when, and only when, he could be of some use, as he put it. Jiraiya thought it was ridiculous, but Naruto had been adamant. At any rate, that time had come. Jiraiya had deemed him ready and was taking him to Konohagakure, the village hidden in leaves, to meet his father. Naruto, the Sannin asked, how are you feeling? It was not an uncommon question, so Naruto wasn't really surprised by it. Learning to identify and control his emotions was part of his training, a part he still had trouble with. Jiraiya would ask him about his feelings in any new situation and this was most definitely a new situation. He frowned slightly, trying to sort through the chaos. Excited, eager, nervous, and something else, he finally replied. I'm not sure, but I think it's fear. Jiraiya cocked an eyebrow. Really? Fear? That's a new one. I've felt it before, Naruto admitted. But that was before I met you. He ignored Jiraiya's blatantly curious look. He was not telling the Toad Sage about the last time he'd felt afraid. I don't like it. He paused, gathering his thoughts. How can I feel emotions that are opposite each other at the same time? Jiraiya chuckled. Well, it is part of the human condition, he said, softly. Feelings follow no logic or order. They are often a jumble, a mess. The more complicated the situation, the more likely it is that we will feel conflicting emotions. And this is most certainly a complicated situation. Wouldn't you agree? Naruto nodded, hanging on his sensei's every word. That is why we must learn to deal with them. Take fear, for example. It is one of those emotions, like anger, that we can use to better ourselves, or that can overwhelm us and make us act stupidly. How do you do that? Make yourself better with fear? Naruto asked, eyes wide, face serious. You must face what you fear, head on. When you have done so, it no longer holds power over you. Naruto cracked a grin. He liked facing things head on. Well, that is what we are doing, Ne? Yes, it is, Jiraiya replied with a smile. And soon. There are the gates of the village. He pointed ahead. The pair had followed the road down from the mountains that surrounded Konoha and they now approached the west gates of the village. The gates stood, tall and green, open to let in traffic during the day, though they would be closed at night. The great wall they were a part of disappeared into the trees on either side. Naruto paused for a moment, drinking in the sight. His first glimpse of his father's village and the place he hoped he could call home. He smiled, ruthlessly suppressing the doubt that assailed him, and stepped forward again. They entered the gates and Jiraiya moved to the side to give their names to the guards. Normally, he wouldn't even bother with the gates at all, let alone the guards, but since he was bringing an unknown person into the village, it was best to follow the protocol. He also wanted Naruto to have time to take in the village. They had learned his keen senses would need a few moments to adjust to the different stimuli of a city after being out in the forest for so long. Noticing the blonde's odd expression, the guard with the bandage over his nose, Jiraiya could never remember his name, chuckled. First time, huh? He asked. Jiraiya nodded. We are heading to the Hokage's office now. The guard gestured at the katana Naruto was wearing. Going to apply to become a ninja? Seeing the big man's nod, the guard continued. Well, I'm sure anyone you see fit to nominate will have no problem with that at all. The other guard, Jiraiya couldn't remember his name either, was still watching Naruto, but he looked more thoughtful. What's his name again? He asked. Uzumaki Naruto, the first guard replied. Jiraiya knew what the man was thinking, but to the guard's credit, he said nothing. Well, any halfway observant person would be able to put two and two together. Naruto really did look just like his father. Jiraiya kept one eye on his student as they headed into the village. Naruto was glancing all around him, wide-eyed, mouth slightly open, taking everything in. The Toad Sage didn't miss the surprised glances and double takes his student was getting from some of the citizens, especially the ninja that seemed to be everywhere here. As they neared the tower, Naruto's eyes came to rest on the great stone faces carved into the bluff behind the village. Is that the Hokage monument, sensei? He asked. At Jiraiya's nod, he exclaimed, that is so cool. I know you told me about them, but seeing them is totally different. Jiraiya chuckled, but Naruto kept his eyes on the monument. He studied the faces carefully, his gaze lingering longest on the image of the fourth and current Hokage. Soon enough, they reached the wide front doors to the Hokage tower. The guards waved Jiraiya through with a bow. He entered and proceeded up the stairs, Naruto at his heels. A rather lovely, dark-haired woman sitting at a desk came into view. The desk was placed on a wide landing with a few chairs scattered around as a waiting room of sorts. Ah, Jiraiya-sama. She called when she caught sight of the tall man coming up the stairs. Yandame-sama is expecting you. You can leave your pack here, it will be taken to your room. Her gaze slid to Naruto, who was now visible behind his sensei, and her eyes widened, but she recovered well. This must be the student you mentioned. I'll let him know you are here. She turned and entered a hallway opposite the stairs and was soon lost to sight. Naruto looked at the Toad Sage. Is my father well known? He asked, his expression pensive. Why do you ask? People keep staring at me, or looking surprised. He is very well known, and not just in this village, Jiraiya replied. Naruto nodded. Is that why you never took me with you to IWA? He asked softly. Jiraiya looked at him for a long moment and nodded. Naruto let out the breath he'd been holding in a sigh. But before any more could be said, the woman returned. She gestured to them. Go right ahead. He's waiting for you, she said with a smile. Thank you, my dear, Jiraiya replied with a wink, while Naruto gave a small bow. They walked down the hall. Jiraiya stopped in front of a set of closed double doors and turned to Naruto. He placed a hand on the teen's shoulder. The blonde looked up, surprised at the contact and grateful for the comfort of the warm, solid hand. Take a deep breath, Naruto, he said. When his student complied, he continued. This is what you have been waiting for. You will do fine. He will accept you. Now, wait here, like we discussed. Naruto nodded, concentrating on his breathing. Jiraiya thought he should probably follow his own advice. His emotions were similar to Naruto's, he just hid them better. He was confident for his student's sake, but in the privacy of his own mind, well, the Hokage was a good man, kind, caring, and patient. But he was only human, and Jiraiya was about to drop one hell of an exploding tag on him. The Toad Sage could really only guess how he'd react. Once Jiraiya had decided to bring Naruto to Konoha, he'd try to prepare the Hokage as best he could without breaking his promise. He'd written letters to his old student describing his new one, dropping any hints he thought he could get away with. It wasn't much, to be honest, but it was something. Hopefully, it was enough. Taking a deep breath himself, he opened the door. Chapter 2. A Chance. Namake's Minato, Yandame Hokage, looked up from his desk as the door opened. A huge smile lit his features at the sight of his sensei, Jiraiya, the Toad Sage. He stood up and walked around his desk to hug the man. Sensei! He exclaimed. I am glad to see you. How are you? Jiraiya returned the hug. Oh, fine, Minato. You? The Hokage was holding him at arm's length now, hands on his shoulders. I'm well, except for this stupid paperwork, he replied, gesturing behind him, dropping his hands to his sides. Jiraiya chuckled. Why do you think I turned down the job? Minato laughed at that, but then got down to business. He leaned on the edge of his desk and crossed his arms in front of his chest. Well, now, sensei, your message said you had someone to introduce to me. Have you finally brought your student to Konoha? I have to say, I'm intrigued. Why now? He's ready now. The Yandame laughed. I should hope so, after 3 years with a Sannin. He gestured to the door. Bring him in. I've been anxious to meet your new student since you first wrote to me about him. Anyone you decided to take on must be special. Jiraiya looked at him with an unreadable expression on his face, his earlier joviality gone. Minato wasn't sure why, but he suddenly felt nervous. His palms were sweaty. The big man said softly. He is, indeed, special. He raised his voice. Naruto, he called, never taking his eyes from his other student's face. Minato shot him a questioning glance at the name. Naruto, that was a name from Jiraiya's first book, wasn't it? He was certain it was. He hadn't thought about that book in years, not since. He turned his mind abruptly from that train of thought and focused his eyes on the door. He had sensed the presence waiting there, of course, and he was curious to meet this boy. Especially after what Jiraiya had said. A young man, maybe 15 or 16, walked in after a brief pause. His eyes were downcast and his gold, spiky hair stuck out in all directions, only restrained by a black headband. The Hokage blinked, his breath catching in his throat. The hair, it was very familiar hair. What? Before he could get any further in his thoughts, the young man, Naruto, clenched his hands into fists and raised his head, looking directly at Minato. And Minato found he couldn't breathe at all. Were it not for a few small differences, he could have been looking in a mirror. The boy's eyes were exactly the same shade of blue as his own, though the shape was different. The boy had wide, round eyes, while Minato's were narrower and slightly slanted. The boy's mouth was a little wider and he had 4 dark marks on his cheeks that resembled whiskers. But the shape of the face, the nose, the jawline, they were all the same. He was staring at the boy, and the boy was staring back, his face blank. But his eyes were full of something, some feeling, or maybe multiple feelings that Minato couldn't begin to identify in his own confused and shocked state. Minato didn't want to know what his own face looked like, it probably wasn't good. He should say something. He was the Hokage. There had to be a rational explanation for this. A reason why a boy who could be his double had just walked into his office, brought there by his teacher. He tried to open his mouth, but found it was open already, so he closed it instead. His hands had fallen to his sides, bracing himself on the desk. He took in a great shuddering breath and tried again. His mouth opened properly this time, but nothing came out. Thankfully, Jiraiya decided to rescue him. Or at least, that's what he thought he was doing. It didn't actually help any. Minato, this is Uzumaki Naruto. Uzumaki. The Hokage managed to croak out, sounding an awful lot like one of Jiraiya's toads. It would have been incredibly funny if it wasn't so damn serious. Jiraiya said softly. Uzumaki. Then the boy did something that neither of them expected. Minato thought he couldn't be more shocked, but he was wrong. Jiraiya had disappeared into the office, leaving the door open for Naruto to enter when he was called. The boy stood, his eyes downcast, waiting. Breathe. Just breathe. He fought to keep his emotions under control. He had never been so nervous, or was he afraid? In his entire life. Not when his mother had left when he was 4, not when he had been chased out of that town by a mob when he was 6, not when he had stood in front of Jiraiya for the first time and asked to be his student when he was 8. No, none of those things compared to the feeling he felt now. Breathe. Just breathe. You're doing okay, sensei. And Naruto was undone. It was all he could do not to rush into the office and throw himself at the man's feet. He'd actually taken a step forward before he realized what he was doing and stopped himself. That voice, it shivered across his skin and made his blood sing. He could feel it in his bones the same way he heard it with his ears. He shuddered, fighting to keep his instincts in check. He would do anything, that voice commanded him to do. If it told him to take his own katana and drive it through his heart, he would do so. In an instant. With a smile on his face. He took another deep breath, which was a mistake. By now, the man's scent had wafted out the door and he got a huge nose and mouthful when he breathed. He bit his lip and clenched his fists. His body was shaking. He could smell the man, taste him in the back of his throat. It was warmth and spice and clean, fresh wind and home. This man, his father, and there was absolutely no doubt in his mind at all this man was his father, was his home. Anywhere this man was, Naruto would be too. That was all there was to it. Even his mother's scent had not affected him like this. She had truly made him to be his father's son. With this thought, with this bone-deep recognition, a feeling of calm spread through him. The anxiety and fear of rejection were still there, if anything they had doubled, but that was something he could face. His instincts receded and the desperate need to be near this man, to grovel at his feet, disappeared. In the back of his mind, he was proud of himself for maintaining his control through it all. The two in the office had no idea of his struggle. That was good, because they were talking about him. It had felt like ages while he fought the sensations overwhelming him, but in reality, it was only a few moments. His father laughed, and Naruto smiled a little at the sound. Perhaps it would be alright. As long as he didn't scare his father too much, at first, yes, perhaps it would be alright. Show him in. Anyone you decided to take on as a student must be special. A pause. Jiraiya was speaking softly, but Naruto had no trouble picking up his words. He is, indeed, special. Naruto's smile grew a little wider, but then he schooled his features in a blank expression and relaxed his hands. Naruto. His sensei had called. This was it. Time to face his fear. He took one more breath, being careful not to breathe too deeply, and entered the room. He kept his eyes down, not daring to look up just yet at his father's face. The man was leaning on his desk, Jiraiya standing next to him. His father was wearing dark pants, the bottoms secured with bandages wrapped around his ankles like gaiters. They disappeared into the tops of his dark shinobi sandals. He was also wearing some sort of white coat with red flames along the bottom. Naruto thought it was really cool. It would probably be even cooler when he got up the courage to look at the whole thing. He heard his father's breath catch a little. He had noticed something, maybe their resemblance? Naruto clenched his fists. Enough of this. Face the fear head-on, Jiraiya had said. So he would. He raised his head and looked at the man in front of him. He stared for a moment. Ero-sennin had been right. He did look just like his dad. When their eyes met, he felt another strong sensation. He did his best to suppress another shudder that ran through him. His vision seemed to grow sharper as he took in every tiny detail of the Hokage's face. Everything else in the room, in the world, disappeared for a moment. That was all the time it took, although again, it felt like an age. He knew the image of his father's face was seared into his memory, like his scent and the sound of his voice, and that he could recall it in perfect detail at any time. 3 connections made, 2 to go. The Hokage stared back at him, his mouth dropping open a little. His arms, which had been crossed in front of his chest, dropped to his sides and gripped the edge of his desk. He had on a dark long-sleeved shirt that was loosely encircled at his wrists and elbows with pale cord. Over that, he wore a dark green vest covered in pockets of different sizes and shapes. Overall was the white coat. It had short sleeves and was held on by a simple red cord below his collarbone. A high collar stood up around his chin. Yep, definitely cool. He had a blue headband tied around his forehead, the metal plate bearing the leaf symbol Jiraiya had taught him. His father was still staring at him. He had closed his mouth and seemed to be trying to say something, but it wasn't working very well. He looked shocked and confused, completely understandable for someone in his situation. The Toad Sage spoke. Minato, this is Uzumaki Naruto, he said. The name meant something to the Hokage. Uzumaki. He repeated, his voice hoarse. Hi. Uzumaki, Jiraiya replied. The Hokage looked more confused. Naruto could see it. He had spent a long time, his entire life, actually thinking about this moment. What he would do, what he would say. What his unknown father would do and say. He had run through every scenario he could conceive of over and over in his head. The confusion and shock on his father's face was more than he could bear. What his father needed at this moment was information. Naruto would provide it. He would explain everything to him, right now. Well, mostly everything. Naruto lowered his eyes again and dropped to his knees. He sat back on his heels and leaned his torso forward, his palms pressed to the floor and his forehead resting between them. It was a bow of complete submission. Yandame Hokage Yui, he began, using the most formal and respectful title he could think of. As Jiraiya-sensei said, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. My mother's name is Uzumaki Kushina. Well, it wasn't her real name, but it was the name she had used when she was in Konoha. I am her gift to you in recognition of your skills as a warrior and leader of your people. Please accept this humble token of her esteem and respect. He paused. Silence. He pressed on. I know I can be of use to you, if given the chance. If you allow it, I will serve none but you until my dying day. Only say the word and I am yours to command. It is my purpose, my dream, to follow you, and to give up my life in your service if necessary. There. He had said what he wanted to say. More silence. He struggled to control his trembling, his fear of rejection making a tight ball in the pit of his stomach and leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. Please, please, he pleaded, to any god who might be listening, let him accept me. Minato stared at the boy at his feet, unsure what to think. He was trembling, obviously trying to control some strong emotion. Without seeing his face, Minato couldn't really tell what it was, but he thought it might be fear. Given the boy's words, he glanced at the white-haired man standing next to him. Jiraiya's eyebrows were just about lost under his forehead protector, the only sign that he was equally shocked at Naruto's actions and speech. Minato stood a few moments longer, before coming to a decision. He dropped to his knees and grasped the boy's arms, lifting him up. Naruto gasped at the contact, but kept his eyes down as he shifted his knees closer to his father to keep from losing his balance. Look at me, Minato commanded. Naruto's eyes instantly lifted to his father's face, glassy from unshed tears. You are my son? The older blonde asked. Naruto hadn't come right out and said it, but it was obvious enough. Mine and Kushina's? Naruto nodded. Minato pulled him into an embrace. Naruto gasped again, eyes wide, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. He managed to lift his arms and clutch at the back of his father's coat. His face he hid in his father's shoulder. I am sorry, Naruto, Minato said, his own voice thick with emotion. She never told me, I never knew. She just disappeared. If I had known, I would have found you. Please forgive me. Naruto pulled back a little, wiping his eyes with one hand. It is all right, Hokage-sama, he said. A gift is supposed to be a surprise, Nebraska? A wry smile twisted his lips. Minato stared at him again. Why did the boy keep referring to himself like that? Gift? Minato finally managed to say, after what seemed like a long time. Humble token? It was hard enough trying to wrap his head around the fact that he had a son, but that this son truly thought of himself as a tool to be used by his father at his convenience? His speech implied he did. It was a completely alien way of thinking to Minato. He looked up at Jiraiya. Jiraiya only shook his head. I knew the boy wanted to be of use to you, but I didn't realize it went this far. It must be an idea his mother gave him. Kushina said she was from the former Whirlpool country. I didn't think they had such notions there. Naruto looked uncomfortable, but spoke. It is the greatest honor of my mother's people, to bestow a child on another, to blend energies with another to create something new. It signifies a great deal of respect and trust. Such a gift is rare, and to be bestowed on it. He broke off, and looked at Jiraiya, then looked down again, biting his lip. It's all right, Naruto, Jiraiya said smoothly. I think one surprise for now, We'll leave the rest of the explanations for another time. Naruto nodded, looking slightly relieved. Minato glanced between the two. He was obviously missing something, but was content to trust his sensei and his newly found son. For the moment anyway. Naruto, he said, come, sit in the chair. I have some other questions for you. He rose to his feet and pulled the boy up with him. He gestured to one of the chairs off to the side of the room. The boy settled in, somewhat warily, Minato thought, while he took the chair next to him. He moved it forward so his knees were almost touching his son's and he leaned forwards. He wanted to be as close as possible. Jiraiya sat on the couch along the wall, facing the two. Naruto, how old are you? The Hokage asked, watching his son's face closely. 15. Almost 16, the boy replied calmly, a slight smile on his face. When is your birthday? Minato asked, the question just occurring to him. October 10th, Naruto replied. His expression hadn't changed, but his body had stiffened slightly and he'd hesitated a moment before he answered. Minato blinked. That was a very significant date in Konoha. Judging by Naruto's reaction, he was aware of it. The Hokage smiled softly, hoping to ease his son's tension. It's coming up soon, then, was all he said. As he had hoped, Naruto relaxed a little and nodded. But Minato's next question had him tense again. Where is your mother? Minato had long ago given up hope of ever seeing his beloved Kushina again, and being Hokage, he really couldn't leave the village to search for her as he had wanted to do. But he still missed her deeply. If there was a chance, he could see her again. Naruto looked down, his smile gone. I don't know, he said quietly. Don't know? Minato repeated, surprise in his voice. When was the last time you saw her? She left when I was 4. Silence. Minato was angry. His eyes narrowed at his son and his hands gripped the arms of his chair. She left you when you were 4? He hissed. How could she do that? The Kushina he knew would never do that. Naruto reached a hand out, hesitantly, and placed it on top of his father's. Please don't be angry with her, he said. It is her way. It is the way of all her people. Actually, it's surprising she stayed with me as long as she did. His father relaxed a little, but was not to be so easily placated. Why didn't she leave you with me, then? I would have been glad, no, overjoyed to take you. Naruto shook his head a little and took his hand back. That is by no means assured, he muttered. But before Minato could protest, he continued. It is simply the way things are done, he explained. I had to be ready and able to be of service before I came here. Minato took a deep breath. I don't pretend to understand that way of thinking at all, Naruto, but I will accept your explanation, he said. For the moment. Naruto looked relieved again. So, what did you do after she left? Naruto shrugged. Okasama trained me to some extent before she left, but there were some things she couldn't help me with. She suggested I find Jiraiya-sensei. She said he might train me, or could point me in the direction of someone who would. So, I traveled around, searching for him. When did you find him? When I was 8. Another silence. You were alone, traveling on your own, for 4 years? Minato was incredulous. Hi. Okasama made sure I could take care of myself. And I didn't mind being alone. I inherited some of her antisocial tendencies, Naruto replied. But you were a child. Minato exclaimed. He didn't quite believe the last statement Naruto had made. His son smiled ruefully. I was never a child, Hokage-sama. And that is all in the past. I survived, I found Erosenin, and here I am. Minato paused, his train of thought disrupted by the name Naruto had used. Erosenin? Naruto looked sheepish and raised one hand to rub the back of his head in a nervous gesture. Ano, he said. It's just a nickname. He was interrupted by the Hokage's laughter. I think it's perfect. He crowed. Hey! Jiraiya interjected. He had been sitting quietly, watching the two interact. Don't you start using it, too. It's disrespectful. Minato only shook a finger at the toad sage. The truth hurts, Erosenin? He teased. But then his expression turned fierce. Besides, I owe you a little something for keeping the fact that I have a son from me for 7 years. You only told me you had a new student 3 years ago. The man on the couch shifted uncomfortably. I knew you wouldn't be happy about that. I only hope you forgive me. Naruto was adamant on that point. Minato turned back to the boy beside him. Naruto nodded. When Jiraiya-sensei told me he knew who my father was, I swore him to secrecy. I refused to let him tell you until I was ready to enter your service. A gift is no good if it is a burden instead of beneficial. Minato shook his head a little. Again, with those words. Gift, burden. He could see his son would not stop looking at himself that way overnight. Well, he had time to change his son's view. And you feel you are ready now? That you will not be a burden? Naruto nodded. Jiraiya-sensei said it was time. I know I still have things to learn, but he said that I know enough to be helpful to you. Minato sighed. He could not get over his son's attitude. You said your mother's people regard all children as gifts? That they are rare? And most are left alone before they are 4? Naruto nodded, his face blank. It's no wonder the Whirlpool country doesn't exist anymore, the yandere mumbled. There was a brief silence before another question came to him. Why did she name you Naruto? Naruto smiled slightly again. She told me it was the name of a character in a book that sensei wrote. This character had many qualities you both admired. She said that you told her if you ever had a son, you would want him to be like the character in the book. Minato smiled broadly. Naruto's words brought back the memories he had suppressed earlier. Memories of Kushina and himself reading the book together, engrossed in the exploits of the ninja, Naruto. He remembered telling her how proud he would be to have a son like the ninja in the book. So, she had remembered, and named their son to honor his desire. His son had a big smile on his face too, the copy of Minato's own. He could see his father was happy and it made him happy. Minato had to laugh. They were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Come in," the Hokage called. His assistant stuck her head through the door. "Pardon the intrusion, Hokage-sama," she began, "but your meeting is in 10 minutes and a few of the clan heads have arrived." Damn, Minato swore. I forgot about that. He had absolutely no desire to sit in a stupid meeting and listen to bickering clan heads. All he wanted to do was sit with this splendid boy beside him and catch up on all the years he had missed. He didn't want to miss another second. But, he had a job to do. He turned to his son. "I'm sorry, Naruto, but I have a meeting to attend." The teen immediately stood. "Of course, Hokage-sama." The yondaime looked up at him thoughtfully. "Before I can accept you as a ninja of this village, I will have to test your skills and abilities," he said. Naruto grinned. "Of course, Hokage-sama. I'm giving you 2 hours to rest, get some food, and prepare. Then, I expect you to be ready to show me what you can do. I will come get you from your room at that time." His son nodded. "Hi, Hokage-sama. I will not disappoint you." He sounded eager and excited. Minato smiled back. His son's grin was contagious. "Very good. I am certain you won't." "Hisa-san," he called. His assistant stuck her head in the office again. "Please show Naruto-kun here to the room prepared for him and kindly have some lunch sent in. Then return here. I have an errand for you before the meeting." She nodded and gestured to the blonde boy that looked uncannily like her boss. The teen in question bowed to the Hokage and left with her. The blonde man turned back to his teacher and slouched a little in the chair, dropping his head in his hands. "I feel like I've been fighting 100 IWA nin," he said. Jiraiya got up from his seat on the couch and walked to his first student. He placed a big hand on his shoulder. "I know it's a lot to take in. It's going to take some time, for both you and him. His whole life has been focused on this day, on meeting you." Minato looked up. "That is something I absolutely cannot understand. How could Kushina put that ridiculous notion into his head that he is some sort of gift to me? He speaks as though he is a tool for me to use. And never once, in all the time he was talking about her, or his life, did he mention love. He said she admired me, respected me. That he was a gift in recognition of my skills. Medals are given in recognition of skills, not children. Children are born from the love of two people. I loved Kushina. In truth, I still do. But he never said she loved me." Jiraiya squeezed Minato's shoulder slightly, a serious expression on his face. "I know it's difficult to understand. I don't quite understand it myself. Once Naruto explains a little more about his mother and himself, it might be easier. Or it might be harder. I'm not sure." Minato shook his head. "You are confusing me even more," he said wryly. "But I will put my questions aside until I speak with Naruto again. I trust you know what you're talking about." His expression turned serious again. "Now, we have some time before I have to meet with the clan heads. Fill me in on the information about Orochimaru you collected." Naruto followed the dark-haired woman through the halls of the tower. He kept his expression blank, but inside his emotions were roiling. She stopped in front of a door and gestured to it. "This is your room, Naruto-kun," she said. "Jiraiya-sama is in the room next door." He nodded to her. "Arigato, Hisa-san," he said and opened the door. It was a simple, but comfortable room with wooden floors and a low table set in front of a couch well stocked with pillows. Through another doorway he could see what he supposed was the sleeping area, and beyond that, a sliding screen he thought led to a balcony. He saw his pack was already waiting for him in the center of the room. Hisa's voice startled him a bit when it sounded from behind him. "Do you have any requests for lunch, Naruto-kun?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, whatever is most convenient for you is fine, Hisa-san," he replied. She smiled. Very well then. Your meal will arrive in about half an hour. He thanked her again and she left. As soon as the door was closed, he gave in to his feelings. His body shook and he sank down onto the couch, clutching a pillow between his hands like it was a lifeline. He had been under tremendous stress, wound up so tightly the whole day, that he was now having trouble relaxing. He bent his head and allowed the emotions to wash over him. All the fear, the anxiety, the excitement. He had felt so many emotions that day, and had gone from feeling one extreme to the other, that he was utterly overwhelmed. He was not good at this. He examined his feelings again. The fear of rejection was still there, but it was tempered with something else. Hope and joy. Finally, after almost 16 years, he had met his father. His father was going to test him that afternoon. His father was giving him a chance. The boy grinned and leapt up from the couch, the pillow falling to the floor. He pumped one fist in the air and began dancing around the room. Yes, yes, yes! He cried. His father was giving him a chance to show he was worthy. And he would prove it. He would be accepted by his father. Jiraiya-sensei would see that he hadn't wasted the last 7 years with him. If he could show the yandere that he was a skilled warrior, that he would be a useful weapon in his father's arsenal, then maybe, it wouldn't matter to him what Naruto's heritage was. Erosenin had accepted him, and his father was Jiraiya's student, too, right? So surely the sage knew what he was talking about when he said Naruto shouldn't worry. He had been right so far, after all. His father had been happy to find out he had a son. He had even hugged him. Naruto stopped dancing at the thought of that contact. He stood stock still, savoring the memory of the feelings that had possessed him at his father's touch. It hadn't been as overwhelming as the reactions produced by the Hokage's voice or scent, but Naruto thought that was because it hadn't been direct skin to skin. It had felt like an electric current sweeping through him, originating under his father's hands. When the current had passed, he had felt totally and utterly content, something he had never felt before. All his life he had felt somewhat lost and a little empty, like he knew there was some place he was supposed to be and he wasn't there. His father's touch had banished that feeling. It felt so right. Naruto had found the place he was supposed to be and it was by his father's side. That sense of contentment had stayed the entire time Naruto was in the Hokage's presence. The lost feeling had returned now that Naruto was no longer next to him, but it was not nearly as strong as before. Naruto knew there was only one more thing to do, one last way to bind himself to his father, and the feeling would disappear entirely. But that was something that had to wait. He would have to be accepted by the Hokage first, and in order to do that, he would have to impress him. He had better start preparing. Jiraiya knocked on the door of his student and, after hearing a muffled come in, he entered. Naruto was sitting on the floor of the sleeping room in front of the open sliding door, facing the gardens outside, although now he had his head turned to look over his shoulder at the door. He had changed into his training clothes, a much more sensible outfit to display his skills in. His new attire was simple, black pants and long-sleeved shirt and black shinobi sandals. The hems of the pants ended just above the edge of his sandals, exposing a little of the mesh protective leggings he wore. He also had on black fingerless gloves with a metal plate on the back of the hand. He had various pouches strapped to his waist and one attached to the side of his right thigh. His katana was strapped to his back. He was sitting in a lotus position, he'd obviously been meditating. The remains of a lunch tray were left on the table, the plates neatly stacked, the water glass empty, the napkin folded and the chopsticks placed on top of it. His student was not really a neat person, but he was a very polite one. "I don't want to disturb your preparations," Jiraiya started. "No, not at all, sensei," Naruto replied, smoothly rising to his feet and coming into the sitting room. "I was getting tired of meditating anyway." Jiraiya chuckled. Naruto was not one to sit still and be introspective. "Are you ready?" he asked. The blonde shrugged. "As ready as I'll ever be, I think." He cocked his head at his sensei. "What do you think this test will be?" Jiraiya shrugged. "He'll probably have you fight someone. A jonin most likely. You might have to retrieve something from the jonin's person or land a certain number of hits on them." "Something like that." They were quiet for a moment while Naruto mulled that over. "I think you should leave your Kekkei Genkai until the very last," Jiraiya said finally. "Hi," the teen replied. That's the plan. Actually, I would rather not use it at all. The Toad Sage looked down at his student. You can't keep it from him. Naruto narrowed his eyes. I know that. I had hoped that I could just tell him about it. Maybe demonstrate one of the lesser abilities. There's no way I'll be able to show him everything I can do, anyway. At least, not right now. That's true, Jiraiya said. He shrugged again. Well, alright. You'll just have to see what the situation calls for. Naruto's expression changed. I will do my best, Naruto said, determination etched in every line of his face, his voice deadly serious, and his eyes implacable. I will make you proud of me, and I will prove myself to the Yondaime. Jiraiya nodded. I know you will, he said. When Naruto got that look on his face, well, the white-haired man knew the boy had an iron will. When he set his mind to do something, he did it, as simple as that. Looking into those eyes, Jiraiya believed Naruto could do anything. Anything at all. It was almost frightening. He reached out and ruffled the young blonde's hair, like he had done years ago with his father. Ah, geez, Arosenin, Naruto complained. And just like that, the determined look was gone, replaced by a very annoyed one. Naruto hated it when his sensei messed up his hair like that. He ducked away from the man's hand and ran his own through his spiky locks, trying to put them back in a semblance of order only he understood. Jiraiya chuckled. How he loved to annoy the boy. There was a knock on the door. Naruto looked surprised. His father wasn't supposed to come for another 20 minutes and he wasn't expecting anyone else. He walked past his sensei and opened the door. His father stood there, smiling at him. Naruto smiled in return and bowed. Hokage-sama, he said. Do you want to come in? He stepped back, allowing the man space to enter the room. Thank you, Naruto, he said, taking a few steps forward. I am a little early, but my meeting was over sooner than I expected, so I thought I would come see how you are doing. Jiraiya snorted. He was pretty sure Minato had purposefully cut his meeting short. His older student ignored him and continued speaking to Naruto. Don't feel rushed though, if you have more preparations to make, please take your time. Naruto shook his head. No, Hokage-sama, I'm ready. Minato nodded. Being prepared was a good trait for a ninja to have. Then shall we go? Naruto nodded and the older blonde turned to head back out the still open door. Oi! Hokage-sama! A cry from his son stopped him short. What? He said, half turning and looking behind him. Naruto was pointing at the back of his coat. It says Yondaime Hokage! He exclaimed, his eyes wide. Minato looked confused and Jiraiya laughed. Yes, it does, the owner of the coat in question said. The red kanji had been added to match the flames along the bottom after Minato had been named the third successor. Jiraiya knew he didn't really like the traditional Hokage robes, so wore the coat instead. The Toad Sage approved. It was much more him. So, it's the coolest thing I have ever seen. The teen crowed, gesturing with his arms to indicate the entire room, or perhaps the entire world. Minato laughed along with the older ninja. You like it, huh? Maybe I'll have one made for you. Would you like to follow in my footsteps and be Yondaime Hokage, Naruto stared at him, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Yondaime Hokage? He murmured, sounding utterly shocked. Minato grinned. I'm teasing, Naruto, he said. I have no idea if you would even want the job. You'd have to like paperwork. Naruto's face lost the shocked look and he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Minato turned back around to exit the room. Jiraiya dropped his smile as soon as the Hokage's back was turned and placed his hand on his young student's shoulder. He gave a gentle squeeze and the boy looked up at him gratefully. Jiraiya nodded and the boy nodded back, then took a breath and walked after his father. No words needed to be spoken. Jiraiya sighed. He didn't think Minato picked up on it, but he recognized the sadness his younger student was desperately trying to hide. Minato didn't know it, and he hadn't intended it, but he had just wounded the boy deeply, with that jest about being Yondaime Hokage. And the young blonde would never let on. A village leader must be accepted by the people, and Naruto was firmly convinced that universal acceptance was something he would never have. Even though it broke his heart, Jiraiya wasn't so sure he was wrong. The yondaime led them to one of the training grounds outside the village walls. They had gone over the rooftops and through the trees, Naruto easily keeping up with his father's speed. Minato was pleased, Jiraiya could tell. They reached the spot and the yondaime landed easily in a large clear space among the trees, Naruto and Jiraiya right behind him. It was one of the larger and less used training areas. No one else was around. Minato shrugged off his jacket and handed it to Jiraiya. He faced his son. Alright, Naruto, your task is to find me and take this bell. He held up a small silver bell on a string, jangled it once so it made a clear ringing sound, and then attached it to a loop at his waist. Use any weapons or jutsu you want. If you don't come at me with the intent to kill, you won't get the bell. He grinned. Naruto blinked at him. You, Hokage-sama? He questioned. My opponent is you? Minato nodded. Naruto looked nervously over at Jiraiya. Jiraiya looked back, impassive. I thought you said it would be some jonin, the young blonde said accusingly. Jiraiya just shrugged. Minato laughed. Well, I wanted to see what you could do against me. I am the Hokage after all, the strongest ninja in the village. Naruto was looking at him with narrowed eyes. You also don't want anybody else to see what I can do just yet. Minato laughed again. That too, Jiraiya smiled. Looking underneath, very good. So, my test is to hunt you down and take the bell away from you? Jiraiya noticed the way his young student had phrased it. Hunt him down, huh? Oh, Minato, you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Naruto was absolutely the best tracker he had ever seen. Minato nodded. I had ANBU clear the area and stand guard at the edge of the grounds. No one else is here and no one will disturb us. Jiraiya understood the hidden motives, although he wasn't sure if Naruto did. Not only had Minato wanted to keep his son's skills a secret, he was expecting some damage to the area and didn't want anyone else caught in it. He had high expectations of his son. Naruto would not let him down. Hokage-sama, can you phrase it as a command? The young blonde asked, with a respectful bow. Minato looked at him, his brows drawn. What? Can you phrase this task as a command? You mean, command you to do this task? Hi. A pause. Why? Naruto looked uncomfortable again. Please, it will make me feel better about coming at you with intent to kill. It wasn't the exact reason, but it was pretty close. Minato shrugged. Sure. I order you to locate my position and take this bell away, using deadly force if necessary. You will start when I say begin. Does that suffice? Naruto bowed again. Yes, thank you, Hokage-sama. Very good then. Begin. And with a grin, the Hokage vanished in a swirl of leaves. Jiraiya watched his remaining student. Naruto stood where he was, and slowly a grin spread across his face too. It wasn't the same sort of grin though. It was a lot more feral than Minato's had been. His eyes were dancing with excitement. It was the expression he wore when he was about to fight. One thing a warrior needed to have been a love of battle. Naruto had that in spades. He hated to kill, well, most of the time, but he loved to fight. It was, after all, what he had been born to do. Jiraiya grinned as well. Minato was in for a surprise. Chapter 3. The Test. After Naruto had gotten over the shock of having his father as an opponent, he had begun to get excited. Finding his father's location would be a snap, especially with the newly formed bonds the Hokage wasn't aware of yet. Getting the bell would be harder, but not impossible. If he had to, he could rely on his Kekkai Genkai for that. Although he wasn't entirely certain he could use it against the Hokage, even with the command allowing deadly force. The keywords had been if necessary and he wasn't sure the seals embedded in his soul would consider its usage necessary to get the bell. Well, he'd have to try it and find out. After his father had shined away, he had stood, letting the excitement of battle overtake him. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He wouldn't be able to find his father by his chakra signature, he was too good at hiding it for that. But his father's scent was easy to trace, even though he had moved in a direction downwind of where Naruto stood. He could also hear the movements the Hokage made, the soft swish of fabric as he brought his hands up into a seal. Suddenly, his father's scent was magnified and his sound was multiplied. Naruto let out a breathy laugh. Shadow clones? The Yondaime had made 5 shadow clones and was sending them out in all directions from the clearing. Only 5? That was easy enough to match. He leapt away into the trees in the wrong direction from where his father was. It would not do to let him know so early in the game that he couldn't hide from Naruto. He felt Jiraiya's eyes on him as he left the clearing. His sensei would watch the action from some secure spot. He wouldn't want to miss this battle between his students. Naruto bounded through the trees, coming close to one of his father's clones, but not too close. He didn't want his father to know his trick had been discovered so soon. He found a particularly dense patch of leaves and slipped in among the branches. He made the same seal the Hokage had and whispered the jutsu's name, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. With a quiet puff and a few wisps of smoke, 10 shadow clones appeared among the leaves. He wasn't dumb enough to think that his clones would be a match for the Hokages in a one-on-one fight. But 2 of his for every one of his fathers should be enough to be a distraction at least. His clones would keep his fathers out of his hair while he went for the original. The 10 split up at his gesture, sliding silently among the leaves and disappearing towards their targets. He stayed in his leafy shelter. He breathed deeply again, letting his senses expand. His father's clones were really good copies, down to the scent and the sound. Just what he would expect from the Yondaime Hokage, who was said to surpass all the Hokages before him. However, there were subtle differences. The sounds the clones made lacked the depth of the original, as if they were standing in an echoless room. The scent was slightly off too, as if it was missing a small but vital component. And it was. Any normal tracker, even a ninja dog, probably wouldn't notice it, but Naruto was no ordinary tracker. He knew exactly what was missing in the sound and scent of his father's clones. If he touched one, or saw one, he knew the feeling and looks of it would be off too, for the same reason. Clones didn't have real blood. What flowed in them didn't call to him. The subtle scent of it was missing from them, and they had no heartbeat, no whisper of blood moving through veins to enrich the sounds they made. They would have no real warmth emanating from their skin, and they would lack the subtle glow it imparted to the skin of the original. These were all things he would notice for any person, but it was made many times easier by the connections he had made with his father earlier. So, he ignored the signals coming from the clones and left them up to his own. He concentrated on the original. The Hokage had moved from his first spot, leaving a clone in his place and moving around the clearing in the opposite direction from where Naruto was. Now he was almost directly across from his son, but moving away. Naruto began following. He circled the clearing and paused again. His father was still moving away. The Hokage was challenging to track. He left no trail at all to follow, not one leaf out of place or one mark on the bark of the branches he landed on. He was almost silent in his movements, too. If Naruto didn't have the bond with him, even he would find him hard to hear. As it was, he had to concentrate more than usual. Naruto knew he couldn't hide his approach from his father. He was stealthy enough, but it had never been his strong suit, and he certainly couldn't hide his chakra well enough to keep it from a ninja as experienced as the Yondaime. He had always relied on his speed and his cunning when he was hunting. His father, though, was faster than he was, so he couldn't rely on that this time. It would have to be cunning, then. He'd have to draw his father into a trap. But how to do that? He stopped suddenly. His father had disappeared. Damn! Naruto closed his eyes and cast around. His father had somehow managed to get behind him. Double damn! Had he been really following a clone? Naruto dismissed that. He trusted his senses. He knew it had been the original. It must be that jutsu. Jiraiya had told him many stories about his father, although he hadn't known he was his father at the time. Included in those stories were ones about the jutsus the Yondaime had developed and his exploits against IWA in the last great shinobi war. So, Naruto knew all about the Hiraishin no Jutsu, the flying thunder god technique, although Jiraiya couldn't teach it to him. Naruto hadn't noticed the seal required for the jutsu, but he hadn't been looking either. It was a safe bet the Yondaime had seals littered all around the grounds, and the village for that matter, so he would be able to move in an instant almost anywhere. And there was no way for Naruto to know exactly how many seals there were, so he couldn't very well watch them all. Naruto figured he would use the jutsu eventually, but didn't think it would be so soon. Damn! He leapt off into the trees again, resuming his chase once more, thinking hard. He couldn't stand around all day. Or could he? The answer came to him so suddenly, and it was so simple, he almost laughed out loud. Minato was impressed. His son hadn't been fooled by any of the tricks he had employed to shake him off the trail. He hadn't caught up to him, but he was never far behind. He was giving Minato no opportunity to actually hide. At first, he had thought the shadow clones had fooled him because he took off in the total wrong direction, but that had been misdirection on Naruto's part. He had formed 10 of his own shadow clones and sent them off after the Hokage's clones, although they hadn't attacked. He had quite easily picked up the real Minato's trail after that and had followed it unerringly. He was gaining too, although Minato hadn't left a visible trail to follow. There was something else going on and he couldn't wait to find out what. He had resorted to the Hiraishin much earlier than he thought he would have to. Even that hadn't done much good. His son had stopped almost immediately, then had resumed his pursuit, coming straight for Minato. He had employed it a couple more times after that, and still Naruto kept coming. The boy was obviously an excellent tracker. Probably the best Minato had ever seen, and that was saying something, considering the clans renowned for their tracking skills that resided in Konoha. Only one odd thing had happened, just a little while ago. One of Naruto's clones had moved towards the edge of the main clearing and then dispersed. Minato couldn't figure out quite why it had done that. He supposed it might have laid a trap for him, but didn't think the clone had been there long enough to do something like that. He shook his head. He couldn't figure it out. He would just have to be on his toes. Since he had gleaned the information he wanted out of this exercise, maybe it was time to let the boy catch him and see what he would do to get the bell. He paused in his tree hopping. He supposed he should head back to the main clearing, so they would have room to maneuver. His son was still following him, he had even sped up, somehow sensing Minato had stopped. He smiled a little and took off in the direction of the clearing, abandoning stealth for speed. He wanted to make it a little ahead of his son. Minato reached the clearing. It was empty, although he could see Jiraiya sitting up in a tree not far from him. He walked over to his sensei and sat down on a stump underneath him. His son was approaching, but he had a few minutes. Oddly enough, the boy hadn't sped up or tried to intercept Minato. Maybe he realized Minato had given up the chase and was ready for the next part of the test. Jiraiya was grinning at him. A really, really big grin. Minato didn't like it. What? He asked. Jiraiya said nothing, but his grin widened, if that was at all possible. Fine, don't tell me, Minato muttered, a little put out. He's a great tracker, isn't he? Jiraiya said, but Minato didn't think that was why he was grinning like an idiot. Yes, Minato said. Do you know how he does it? Jiraiya nodded. He has exceptional senses. He'll explain it to you, I'm sure. That really didn't tell Minato much, but he let it go. He'd find out eventually. His son was getting close, but he was angling around the clearing, trying to approach Minato from behind. Minato nodded to himself. It was a good strategy. Or at least it would be if he couldn't sense his son coming. Really, the boy's chakra was like a flaming beacon. He stood up from the stump and stretched. Well, time to see what else he can do, he said, and started walking to the center of the clearing. His son appeared in a tree near where he had been sitting a moment later. He took one glance into the clearing and attacked. Minato had to hand it to him, he didn't waste time. He started with a blast of wind that Minato countered with his own wind jutsu. The two met and cancelled each other out with a roar that shook the treetops around them. He was proud for 1 second at the power contained in the jutsu and that his son had wind affinity like he did. It was rare in Konoha. He was only proud for 1 second though, because after that he had to dodge the flurry of shuriken his son had hidden behind the wind blast. It was a tricky thing to do. Minato loved it. Naruto followed in the wake of the shuriken and leapt at Minato, a kunai in his hand. Minato countered with his own kunai and they exchanged a flurry of blows. His son had excellent taijutsu skills for a 15-year-old. He didn't recognize the style, but then, he was no expert. He'd have Guy watch him sometime soon. Naruto was grinning like a madman. It reminded Minato of Jiraiya's grin and it was starting to make him uneasy. What the hell? He muttered through clenched teeth. What did they know that he didn't? He was having fun sparring with his son, but he wanted to know what was going on. He upped his speed. His son kept up for a little bit, but couldn't block the blows for long. Minato landed 3 with his fist in quick succession, but noticed the grin never left Naruto's face. Then he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Minato froze. A shadow clone? Minato was utterly dumbfounded. That had been a shadow clone? Then where was the real Naruto? He glanced behind him, back towards Jiraiya. The stump wasn't there anymore. What? A slight tremor in the ground was all the warning he had. He leapt straight up, and he almost wasn't fast enough. His son exploded out of the ground right behind where he had been standing, one hand extended, the other clutching a kunai. His fingers brushed his father's foot. Minato flipped in the air to land behind his son, but Naruto had spun on his heel to face him as soon as he landed and had started forming hand seals. He wasn't going to give his father a chance to catch his breath. This time it was a water jutsu. A swarm of water bullets flew at Minato. He had seen the familiar signs his son was making and had a defense, although he'd had to speed really quickly though the seals to be ready in time. The moment he touched the ground he slammed his palm down and called up an earth wall to block the water. He left it up a moment in case his son had prepared another jutsu. When he didn't feel anything, he lowered it enough to see Naruto, but not so much he couldn't raise it again in a moment if needed. His son was standing in a defensive posture, kunai in hand, watching him. It seemed to be a bit of a break, although Minato wasn't sure why. Naruto wasn't even breathing hard, even after chasing him around for half the afternoon and firing off a couple powerful jutsus. He was proud of his son. So proud. He was fighting at a high level, especially for his age. And he had the same elemental affinities as Minato. Wind and water. His name was Namikaze after all. He wondered if he could use a third yet and what it was. And the thing he did with the shadow clone. How did you do that? He called. There was a pause while his son looked at him warily. Do what? He asked. That thing with the shadow clone. I could have sworn it was you. I didn't realize you had exchanged places with one. Nor did I sense you come into the clearing. His son's smile was almost too bright to look at. Oh, that, he said. I knew you would come back here eventually. All I had to do was wait. But you couldn't know I was waiting. So, the next time you used the Hiraishin, I timed it to create a shadow clone just when you disappeared. You wouldn't notice the jutsu during the heartbeat it takes you to reappear. The instant I created the clone I suppressed my chakra and held still while the clone searched for your new position and took off after you. Suppressing my chakra is hard for me, though, and I couldn't be sure you wouldn't still sense me. So, I made my way to my nearest shadow clone. I had it walk with me to the edge of the clearing to mask any chakra I might be leaking. Once here I transformed myself, using the dispersal of the clone to cover the jutsu. Then I waited. What did you disguise yourself as? I didn't sense you at all when I got here. The stump, his son replied. The stump? He blinked. That stump? Under the tree Jiraiya was sitting in? It had disappeared, but... The younger blonde nodded. But that's impossible. I sat on that stump. It wasn't an illusion. Naruto laughed. It was the first time Minato had heard the sound and he loved it. It was beautiful, loud, rich, and absolutely contagious. Minato found himself smiling, even though he was still confused. It wasn't an illusion, his son finally agreed, his laughter dying but mirth still evident in his voice. When I transform, I physically change into the thing. To normal senses, I am the thing I have transformed into, so I am close to impossible to detect. Minato stared at his son. The plan he had come up with was incredibly simple, but crafty and damn near impossible to pull off. Yet he had done it. How could Naruto possibly know when he was going to use the Hiraishin? And then to time the Kage Bunshin Jutsu so perfectly to coincide with the instant Minato was jumping and unable to sense the world around him. He knew maybe a handful of ninja that could do it. And none of them were 15. Most ninja wouldn't even recognize that weakness in the Hiraishin to exploit. The information about the nature of his transformations was icing on the cake. Minato had never heard of a ninja physically changing using the Henge Jutsu. It shouldn't be possible. And yet, his son had most definitely done it. He would have to explore that ability later. Right now, he still had an opponent to face. He decided to take it up a notch. That is most impressive, Naruto. Be careful what jutsus you use, or they might be used against you, huh? No wonder you two were grinning at me like that, he said, making discreet hand seals behind the wall while talking. How did you know when I would use the Hiraishin? He kept his eyes on his son. He didn't seem to notice what Minato was doing. I heard you. Minato almost lost control of the jutsu. Heard me? Jiraiya had said Naruto had incredible senses, but still. What do you mean, heard me? It wasn't hard to sound incredulous. Well, but the rest of Naruto's explanation was lost as Minato released the jutsu, another wind attack, but this one more powerful and in the form of a whirlwind. If it hit, Naruto would have some serious gashes. Minato watched his son's eyes widen, then narrow, and his free hand moved up to his lips. It looked like a fireball jutsu, but he hadn't had time to make any hand seals. Then the whirlwind got in the way and the Hokage couldn't see him properly anymore. Damn it, Minato thought. Then the world exploded in raging fire. His son had managed a fireball, even without hand seals, although it wasn't very big. That didn't really matter as the wind attack fueled it, causing it to expand like mad and engulf the entire area. Minato dropped behind the wall while simultaneously raising it up. The flames licked around the edges and streamed past overhead. The heat was intense. Well, that answered his earlier question. His son did indeed have a third affinity he could use, and it was fire. But how did he manage it without seals? It was possible to use jutsu without the seals that helped mold chakra, but usually 15-year-olds didn't have the control necessary to do it. Most ninja in general didn't, no matter how old they were. The flames were dying and Minato straightened up. Suddenly, Naruto appeared at the top of the wall, katana in hand. Before Minato could react, he leapt off the wall, twisting in the air to land behind the Hokage. The older blonde barely had time to turn and raise his kunai before his son was on him. Naruto was a good swordsman, too, and he definitely had the advantage against a kunai. Only Minato's greater speed and experience kept him from getting sliced up. He couldn't understand how Naruto had gotten to the wall so fast. The flames hadn't even totally died out. He must have come through them, but he didn't even look singed. Minato was confused again. It was a state he was getting all too used to in this fight. His son had a knack for doing the unexpected. Not a bad trait in a ninja. The Hokage was being pushed back against the wall by Naruto's greater reach, which was obviously what his son intended. If he trapped him there, it would be all over. Luckily, he could do something about that. Minato released the jutsu and the wall disappeared. There, now he could. There was someone behind him. He half-turned, trying to keep his son in his line of sight. The boy was pressing the attack, using Minato's distraction. He blocked a flurry of blows while trying to process the new threat. His son was lunging forward holding a swirling ball of orange chakra in his hand, grinning like mad. Shadow clone. Rasengan? Minato couldn't believe it, but he didn't have time to ponder. He also didn't have time to dodge, so he did the only thing he could in the situation. He used Hiraishin to transport himself to the other side of the clearing. Just before he disappeared, he felt a sharp burn low down on his side, below his vest. His son had nicked him. He reappeared, immediately dropped into a fighting stance and drew in a deep breath. His gaze was on his son and his son's clone. The one that had formed the Rasengan was still grinning, and holding something up, but not a ball of chakra. It was the bell. Minato looked down to his waist, but there was nothing there except the gash the katana-wielding Naruto had given him. He had sliced the bell away with that last attack. The yondaime laughed aloud. His son was amazing. His strategy was excellent, sending the shadow clone for distraction while he hid behind the wall to form the Rasengan. Again, using his opponent's jutsu against him. His shadow clones were impeccable and his control of them was superb, definitely better than Minato's. And he knew the Rasengan. He'd have to grill Jiraiya about that later. Right now, he wanted to test it out against his own. Very good, Naruto. I am thoroughly impressed, he began, putting the kunai away, but stopped. His son was no longer looking at him and grinning. Instead, both Narutos were staring at the katana with unreadable expressions and clenched fists, breathing in short, shallow gasps. Blood was smeared across the blade. His blood. Well, Naruto had cut him when he severed the cord of the bell, but it wasn't a serious wound, just a scratch really. He'd certainly had worse. Was that why his son was looking like that? Naruto, the older blonde, began, wanting to reassure the young ninja, but stopped again when his son, the real one, the one that had been holding the bell, looked over at him. His face was blank, but there was something moving in his eyes, literally. Minato had never seen anything like it. It was like something stirring the water of a pool just under the surface. You couldn't see exactly what it was, but you knew it was there. And you thought it was big. Minato didn't like it. He felt the first stirrings of fear in his gut. Naruto, he breathed again, this time a whisper. But a movement next to the young man drew his son's attention. The clone had started moving the katana so the edge was near his face. Minato had no idea what he was doing, but Naruto seemed to. The original instantly shot out a hand to grab the clone's wrist, stopping the motion. The clone looked at the original and growled, a low, quiet sound that still easily reached Minato's ears. The original growled right back, his face hard. The Hokage blinked. Clones weren't aggressive towards their creators. What the hell was going on? The original was moving the hand grasping his clone's wrist, bringing the sword towards his own face now. The clone had stopped growling, but he looked angry. The real Naruto placed his other hand along the flat of the blade, steadying it. He brought it right up next to his mouth and licked the blood from the blade, staring at his clone the whole time. Minato was shocked. He stared at his son, who had dropped his hands to his sides. His eyes were closed and he had a dreamy expression on his face, his clone seemingly forgotten. A great shudder racked his body, then another, and he moaned softly, but his expression never changed. What the hell is he doing? What's wrong? He took a step forward, intending to go to his son, but he stopped again. He found he couldn't move. Fear had flooded the clearing. It was the only way Minato knew how to describe it, although it wasn't quite right. The feeling that surrounded him, that made his skin crawl, that choked the breath from his lungs and made the air press down on his shoulders like a weight certainly inspired fear, but it wasn't exactly fear itself. It was like the killing intent from a high-level ninja, but again it wasn't exactly the same. He had only ever felt this kind of feeling once, almost 16 years ago. His thoughts froze and refused to move any further. That's not possible. Panic was starting to creep into the edges of his brain. Please don't let that be possible. Every instinct in his body was screaming at him to run. To get as far away from here as possible, as fast as possible. But he still couldn't move. He could only watch his son. The feeling was coming from him. The clone was growling again, but Naruto dispersed the jutsu with a wave, still without opening his eyes. Minato's gaze was drawn to the young man's hands. The nails had sharpened and lengthened. Now they looked like claws. The whisker marks on his face had deepened and thickened until they were harsh slashes marring his cheeks instead of thin lines. His eyes opened and he looked directly at his father. Minato could not suppress the gasp that escaped his lips. His son's eyes were no longer a beautiful blue, but crimson red. The pupils were slits. Minato had seen eyes like that before. Oh, Kami, he'd seen them. No! His mind shrieked. How is this possible? Naruto was grinning again, but this grin was more like a snarl. It stretched his now black lips over his teeth, exposing the fangs his canines had become. Minato couldn't breathe and he thought he might drown in the fear and despair that washed over him. Please let this be a dream, please let me wake up, even if it means I don't have a son. That thought stopped him cold and the fear receded somewhat under his disgust with himself. Did I really just think that? I don't mean that, do I? His reverie was interrupted by a burning in his side. He glanced down and his eyes widened. Blood was flowing freely from the cut Naruto had given him. Way too much blood for such a small wound. He pressed his hand against it, trying to staunch the flow. He glanced back up and saw his son pointing a clawed finger at him. Was he doing this? Naruto made a slight movement, like he was taking a step forward, and he disappeared. He reappeared a moment later right in front of Minato. The older ninja hadn't seen him coming. He involuntarily took a step back. At least he tried to, but he couldn't move. He wasn't just frozen with fear and shock this time, he was literally unable to move. The clawed hand was no longer pointing at him, but was held up with the palm facing him, fingers splayed. His son was controlling him somehow. With his other hand, Naruto reached forward and grabbed the wrist of the hand Minato had pressed to his side. His claws dug into Minato's skin. The Hokage would have flinched if he had been able to. Naruto brought his father's hand up to his mouth and began licking the blood off his fingers. Naruto was breathing hard and had a look akin to ecstasy on his face. He was moving slowly, seeming to savor every taste. Under the fear and shock, Minato had to admit he was somewhat fascinated, although a little disgusted too. What was this power? He was also starting to feel annoyed. He was tired of being shocked and confused. Naruto was almost finished licking the blood off his hand. The palm that was facing Minato had started to sag a little and Minato wondered if he could move now. He tested it out, starting small. He could move his eyes, could move his lips. Could he speak? Naruto. He breathed. It was barely even a whisper of sound, but it was enough. His son rolled his eyes up in their sockets to look at him without moving his head. Their gazes locked. For a moment, Minato berated himself. His son was dangerous, a predator, and he had just drawn his attention. Why had he done that? But then, Naruto's head jerked up and he stared at his father. The red in his eyes started to recede. It was fascinating to watch. His pupils compressed back into a round shape and the crimson color seemed to drain away into them, leaving crystal blue in its wake. The pressure on Minato's wrist disappeared as Naruto's claws shrank back into nails and the dark lines on his face returned to their normal size. The choking feeling in the clearing disappeared like it had never been. Minato found himself staring into the perfectly normal face of his son again. A face that was very quickly filling up with horror and shame. Naruto took a deep, shuddering breath and let it out with what sounded like a strangled sob. He dropped his father's wrist and made a quick swiping motion with his hand, then a flicking motion. He dropped his other hand, the one that had been holding his father still, and he leapt backward, away from the blonde in front of him. In one bound, he cleared about 30 feet. Never once did he take his eyes from his father. Minato watched him go, making no move, even though he was free again. The look on his son's face never wavered, and he had tears pouring from his eyes. The instant Naruto touched down, he dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead into the ground in front of him in the same bow he had used earlier in Minato's office. He was shaking violently. "Wayandame Hokage," he said, his voice shaking almost as badly as his body. I am so very sorry. I can know my actions are unforgivable, but please, he didn't seem to be able to finish. His breaths were sobs and it took a few moments before he could speak again. I willingly submit to any punishment you see fit. Minato simply looked at him. He had no idea what to do, so he just stood, watching this boy, his son, a dangerous creature, cowering on the ground. Chapter 4. Answers. Jiraiya sighed from his perch in the tree. That could have gone better. He jumped down and made his way quickly to his first student. Minato didn't look at him or acknowledge his presence. He was just watching his son, huddled on the ground, falling apart. "Minato!" he started. "Don't," the blonde man interrupted. His voice was devoid of any emotion, blank. Jiraiya shut up. The Yondaime had to deal with this on his own, and he obviously didn't want any input. Fine. He would just stand here and lend silent support to both his students. Naruto couldn't control the tremors racking his body or the sobs escaping from his throat, although he was trying. But what did it matter now? Nothing mattered now. He squeezed his eyes shut and dug his fingers into the grass, leaving gouges in the earth as he shook. He was biting his lip so hard it was bleeding in a desperate effort not to scream. He wished the earth would open up and swallow him. He'd ruined everything. He had been doing so well. He had actually gotten the bell. His father had been impressed, and he was sure Jiraiya would be proud. He hadn't even had to use his Kekkai Genkai. He would have explained things to his father, told him what to expect, before he used it. But it was all too late for that now. Everything he had accomplished, all the progress he had made, gone, erased, destroyed, in one instant when he had lost control. He knew it would be hard for him if he drew his father's blood during the fight, so he had tried to avoid that. And he had managed it, up to the end. Even then, it had been such a small amount, he thought he would be okay. And he had been, although only barely. It had been infinitely harder than he thought it would be. When the scent of his father's blood had reached him, it had been all he could do not to taste it. It trigged a desperate, burning thirst in his throat. It sang to him, although the call was fading, the energy it contained dissipating the longer it sat on the blade, drying in the late afternoon sun. He had been able to retain a thin thread of control, although it took every ounce of concentration and he couldn't do anything but stand completely still. If he made any sort of movement, he thought he would snatch up the katana and taste the blood. It was hard, desperately hard for him, but he had done it. The longer the blood was out of the body, the less he wanted it. He only had to hold on a little longer, and he thought he would be able to move to disperse the jutsu and get rid of the clone and the blood. He'd deal with the fresh blood scent coming from the Hokage after that. But the clone, the stupid clone, had tried to taste the blood itself. He should have dispersed it immediately, even before the blood scent had gotten to him, but he had been so happy to get the bell, he hadn't even thought of it. And once the blonde had tasted the blood, he was lost. The roar of his instincts had brushed his control aside like he would brush a wisp of cobweb from his face. But, oh Kami, it had tasted so good. It had been the most amazing thing he had ever had, and it wasn't even fresh. He immediately wanted more. One more taste of fresher blood wouldn't hurt. His father was already bleeding. The wound he had given the Hokage was shallow and the blood had already stopped flowing. It was easy enough to make it start again and draw more blood out than would normally appear. It was also easy to hold his father still, so he wouldn't move away. Humans were so oddly squeamish about having their blood consumed. In the back of his mind, he was a little surprised his powers were working at all against his father, but he didn't pay the thought much attention. He was too focused on the blood. When he had tasted the fresh blood, it had been ecstasy. He had never felt so incredibly alive, the energy in his father's blood transferring to him. It tasted the way his father smelled, warm and spicy and clean and home, on top of the metallic taste only blood had, but 100 times more intense. He had savored every drop, and it sang to him. The way he had felt his father's voice in his bones, he felt the song of his father's blood in his veins. His own blood had answered the song, trying to match his own energy to his father's, like making a harmony to match his father's melody. His heart had skipped a few beats to match the rhythm of his father's heart. It wasn't perfect, because the blood wasn't directly from the vein. But it was close, and Naruto had yearned to complete the ritual, to finish the bonding, to cement the connection. But it wouldn't happen now. He was certain, absolutely certain from the depths of his being, that his father would reject him. That his father would want nothing to do with him. Jiraiya was probably disgusted with him too, after that display. His father's voice, as soft as it had been, had gotten his attention, and the look on his face when Naruto had glanced up. The horror and shame Naruto felt, when he realized what he was doing, had snapped him out of his state in an instant. He had desperately clamped down on his instincts, released his father, and leapt away, but the damage had been done. He had apologized, but words were fairly useless in this situation, and he didn't think it would matter in the slightest that he had meant them from the bottom of his soul. He had seen the look on his father's face. Fear had dominated the Hokage's expression, but there had been something else. Naruto had seen it often enough to know exactly what it was. Disgust. It hadn't been very obvious, but it had been there. And it had broken his heart and crushed his spirit. His father was just like all the others. He was happy to have Naruto around when he thought he was normal, human like everyone else. But the moment Naruto showed his other side, showed his Kekkei Genkai, that changed. Fear and disgust. He was used to it by now. It was the reaction he always got. Even Jiraiya felt it, at least at first, but he had always been able to ignore it, to get over the pain of rejection by others, because he had clung to the belief that his father would be different. That, as long as he worked hard enough, as long as he showed his father, he was valuable, as long as he was careful about introducing his father to his powers, his father would accept him, even the other part of him. His purpose in life would be fulfilled and he would finally be home. Some days, that had been the only thought that had kept him going, and he had just wrecked his only chance. It didn't matter how good he was now, how valuable he might be. Because he knew where fear and disgust led. Where they had led every other time, someone had seen his power. Hate. His father might not hate him now, but he would. He is, after all, only human. The bitter thought raced through Naruto's mind, and that would be the end of it. The Hokage would never allow Naruto to stay in the village, to stay with him, let alone be a ninja. Now, he had no purpose and no home. No place he belonged. It was his worst nightmare come true. Despair crashed over him in waves and he thought he might drown in it. He had not the slightest hope. Minato stared at the teen crouched on the ground for what felt like a long time, his face blank. He didn't know what the hell was going on, not at all. But damn it, he was going to find out. I am really tired of being confused, he said. He spoke quietly, only talking to Jiraiya. His eyes narrowed. So, you are going to tell me everything you know. Because I know you know what's going on, Jiraiya sighed. I know some of it. Where should I start? How about with whatever the hell that was? We call it his Kekkai Genkai, but that's not really what it is. Minato snorted. No kidding. I've never seen anything like that before. Jiraiya ran a hand through his hair. He really didn't want to be the one to explain this. To understand about the power Naruto has, you have to understand he's not. Jiraiya trailed off. Minato looked at him expectantly. The Toad Sage tried again. Look, Kushina-san wasn't. Why couldn't he just say it? Wasn't what? Wasn't from Whirlpool? I kind of get that feeling, Minato said sarcastically. An idea was forming in the back of his mind, but it was well, suffice to say he really didn't want to contemplate it. Jiraiya gave a short bark of laughter. No, she most definitely wasn't from Whirlpool, he muttered. Well, where the hell was she from then? Minato yelled. He was really on his last nerve here and his sensei was beating around the bush. It felt good to yell, to get some of his frustrations out. Just spit it out. Naruto should be the one explaining this. Jiraiya yelled back. I don't understand half of it myself and it's really not my place. This is between you and him. Naruto is in no condition to be telling anybody anything. Minato replied, pointing at the form huddled on the ground. He and the Toad Sage had both seen broken men, those who had reached their limit and had been pushed beyond it. Naruto looked disturbingly like those men. He had stopped sobbing, but Minato didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. It's alright, Yandame Hokage Yui. I will tell you whatever you want to know, a voice said. The men turned to face the boy that had spoken. He was still kneeling, but he had lifted his head from the ground. Now he simply sat, his eyes downcast, his hands sitting lifelessly in his lap. He was still trembling, but it wasn't nearly as violent as before. His voice was scratchy, as if he had torn up his throat with his sobs, which Minato thought was entirely possible. It was also empty, devoid of any emotion. A trail of blood from his lip was drying on his chin. He made no move to wipe it away. Minato narrowed his eyes a little. You don't have to do that, Naruto. Jiraiya-sensei can answer my questions. Forgive me, Hokage Yui, but he is correct when he states he doesn't understand everything. I am the only person who could possibly provide you the information you need. He is also correct in the fact that this is a matter between you and myself. I am the proper person to be answering your questions. Minato blinked. The whole speech had been delivered in that expressionless tone. And the phrasing, it was so formal, almost archaic. Jiraiya sighed next to him. He only talks like that when he is nervous. But that voice isn't like him. Minato nodded, but didn't say anything. Instead, he walked closer to where the young blonde was kneeling. Jiraiya followed him. He stopped about 5 feet away. Naruto, look at me, he commanded, his own voice carefully blank. Naruto instantly complied. Minato heard Jiraiya's small gasp, and he knew he himself showed some surprise. All the life had disappeared from Naruto's face. His features were completely blank and his eyes were dull. The spark, the fire, normally contained in them was totally gone. Minato had only been in his presence for a few hours, and he already knew that Naruto was a bundle of energy, of life. That even in his darkest moments, he still burned brightly. Jiraiya had been with him for 7 years, so the realization hit him harder. But both men knew this was bad. He was broken. Now, if they could only figure out why, maybe they could put him back together. Naruto didn't react to them at all. He simply looked at Minato. Very well, Naruto, the Hokage said. Jiraiya-sensei was trying to tell me something earlier. Did you hear that? Naruto nodded. Will you tell me what he was trying to say? He was trying to say that in order to understand my power, you have to understand that I am not. He stuttered a little and looked down at the ground again, not an entirely human. Minato said nothing. He was trying to absorb it. He wasn't exactly surprised, not after what he had seen and felt, but this was the possibility he hadn't wanted to consider. You're not a Jinchuriki, he said. It was a statement, not a question. He was grasping at straws and he knew it. Naruto shook his head. Then what are you? Naruto flinched slightly, but answered. I am a Hanyu. Hanyu. Minato breathed. Half-demon. He thought that was just a legend. But it explained things. Some things. Well, actually, nothing. It didn't explain a goddamn thing. If you are a Hanyu, then Kushina. He couldn't finish the thought. Naruto finished it for him. My mother is a demon. He started to sway, and Jiraiya caught him, which was good because his legs wouldn't support him anymore. The only demons I have ever heard of are the Bijou. How is this possible? Minato whispered. The woman he had known had been a powerful ninja, yes. She had been somewhat aloof, with a wicked temper, yes. But a demon. His only experience with demons was the attack of the Kyuubi, almost 16 years ago. Kushina did not seem at all like the Kyuubi. There are others besides the Bijou, Hokage-ui, Naruto answered. Konoha is part of my mother's territory. She was visiting here and met you. She was very intrigued by you, which is no small thing, to excite the interest of a demon. Traits like courage, loyalty, and dedication are very important to demons. They also value battle skills. She was very impressed by the things she saw in you. She even went so far as to enjoy your company. I cannot stress how unusual that is. For a demon to actually seek out a human is nearly unheard of. You must be a very exceptional person. She was impressed by me? She enjoyed my company? Minato repeated, pushing away from his sensei to stand on his own 2 feet again. Did she love me at all? Naruto didn't say anything for a moment. When he answered, his voice sounded sad. No, Hokage-ui. She did not love you. She does not love me. Demons do not feel emotions such as love. They are incapable of it. He paused. I'm sorry, he whispered. Minato rubbed his eyes. Ugh. He wanted to know more about Kushina, but really, it was of secondary importance. She wasn't here. Naruto was. He was the issue that had to be dealt with now. So, whatever her feelings were, she felt enough of them to honor me with a gift, he said. Hi, Hokage-ui. There is no higher honor. For it to be bestowed on a human is extraordinary, Naruto said, repeating his words from earlier. I take it there aren't a lot of other Hanyu running around, then? No. My mother knew of no others. There may be 1 or 2 she didn't know about, but no more than that. So, Naruto was most likely one of a kind. No other like him in the whole world. At least each Jinchuriki had up to 8 other people in a similar situation as they were. What a lonely existence. Minato sighed. And this attitude about offspring being objects to be used is common to demons? It is universal. What about a desire for family? Or passing on knowledge to a new generation? Demons have no desire for family. They do not much like company of any sort, actually. They are not social creatures like humans are. And there is no point to passing on knowledge. Demons are basically immortal. They do not age and they do not get sick. They can be killed, but, for the most part, it is difficult to do. So, they do not feel the need to have children. The only purpose for offspring is as a gift. Which is why, after you were born, your mother only stayed with you for 4 years. Hi. Most demon children are born as full-grown adults with all the skills and knowledge bestowed on them by their parents. It doesn't take them very long to become strong enough to be useful. Because I am half human, my creation was different. Okasama carried me for only a few months before I was born, and I grew much more rapidly than a human child for a while. I have also been aware from the moment I was born. Okasama was able to start training me right away. When I was 4 years old, she deemed me ready to go out on my own. Then she left. That comment Naruto had made earlier about never being a child had confused Minato. Now he understood, at least a little. And you went to find Jiraiya-sensei. Naruto nodded. Okasama couldn't help me with any of the human traits I had, like your affinities for wind and water, or my emotions. Your emotions? It's not just love that demons can't feel. They are devoid of many emotions. So Okasama really had no idea how to deal with mine. She couldn't even name most of them. Minato was getting a headache. A really bad one. This was all too much for him. He rubbed his eyes again. Okay. Alright, so you found Jiraiya-sensei and trained with him. What about what you did a little while ago? That was definitely not something you got from me. Naruto shook his head. No, that was entirely my demon half. Demons have affinities like humans do. They just have more elements they can possibly be aligned with. My mother's primary affinity, and, therefore, mine as well, is blood. Minato stared. Blood? The teen nodded. I have a connection to it. It calls to me. It gives me energy. I can do simple things like control it, and more complicated things, like absorb a person's memories with it. Minato blinked. Control blood and absorb memories? Among other things. So, it was you making my cut bleed. Hi, Hokage Yui. He sounded sad again. Jiraiya cut in. He also stopped the bleeding. Ha? Minato looked down. The cut was, indeed, no longer bleeding and had actually formed a scab. It looked like he had gotten it a day ago instead of less than an hour. Not only that, there was no dried blood on his skin or in his clothes like there should have been. Naruto had somehow gotten rid of it. That must have been what he was doing when he made those motions with his hand before he leapt away. Oh. Did you stop me from moving too? Naruto nodded. I don't know why my powers worked against you, though. Why wouldn't they? Demons don't really trust each other. A gift is made in such a way that it can't turn on the recipient it is meant for, unless it is given a direct order by that recipient. That's why you had me command you to take the bell. Hi. It was the only way I could fight you. Well, then, doesn't that explain you being able to use your power on me? No, Hokage Yui. I had obtained the bell. I had fulfilled the command. The directive no longer applied. I shouldn't have been able to do it. I have an idea about that, Jiraiya said. Minato turned to look at him. I think it worked because Naruto wasn't threatening you in any way. He wasn't seeking to hurt or kill you. He made a shallow cut bleed more than usual, but you were in no danger of bleeding out. He stopped you from moving, but he didn't stop your heart or your breathing. Again, uncomfortable probably, but not actually life-threatening. I've seen him when he does intend to hurt someone, and that was nothing like it. Why do you think I didn't intervene? I knew Naruto would never harm you. Minato looked back at the boy kneeling on the ground, thinking hard. He had felt threatened, especially when he couldn't move, but that was really because he had been so afraid. There was no doubt in his mind that Naruto could hurt others, badly. But really, what had he done to Minato? Scared him. And licked his blood off his fingers. He sighed. Naruto, is that possible? Naruto shrugged. I suppose, Hokage Yui. Fine then. You had the bell. Your command had been fulfilled, as you said. So why did you use your power? Why did you lick my blood? I lost control. It was a small whisper of sound. Minato barely heard him. Lost control? Naruto started. He paused, took a shaky breath, and tried again. I said I have a connection with blood. It's more than controlling it. I can hear it. I can hear the heartbeat of every living creature. I can hear the blood moving in their veins. I can hear the sound of the energy contained in blood. It calls me to taste it, to transfer a little of that energy into myself. And I need it. I crave it. I have to satisfy that need. Minato was staring at him. You drink blood from people? He tried to keep the distaste out of his voice, but didn't quite succeed. No. Naruto's voice actually had some force behind it for a minute, but it quickly disappeared. He flicked his eyes up to look at Jiraiya, then dropped them to the ground again. Animals, he said softly. Jiraiya understood. That was what Naruto was doing on his walks. Hunting. And he hadn't wanted his sensei to know. He had been afraid of what the Toad Sage would think. He shook his head a little. The boy was speaking again. I drink from animals so it's easier to control my instincts around people. It's one of the first things Okasama taught me. I haven't tasted human blood in years, except for enemies. That's true, Minato, Jiraiya interjected, trying to help his young student. I haven't seen him lose it like that in a long time. If it's true, why today? Why my blood? Minato asked. He had to be sure Naruto wasn't a threat to the village. He couldn't have a half-demon running around drinking people's blood. Your blood is different from others. Special. Because you are my father, the recipient of the gift. You are whom I am meant for. Your blood sings to me like no other. It's the most beautiful music I have ever heard. I couldn't resist it. I knew it would be hard the first time, but I underestimated just how hard. And then the clone. He trailed off and shook his head. So, it was the clone, Jiraiya murmured. I thought so, but I wasn't sure. Minato was looking between the teen and his sensei. What about the clone? Jiraiya replied. Naruto was controlling himself. He was having a hard time, but he was doing it. Then the clone tried to taste your blood. Naruto is very territorial. If someone tries to take what he considers his, well, it's not pretty. It's a demon instinct, Naruto said. You defend what is yours until death. It didn't matter that the clone was, technically, me. The instant he tried to take your blood, I saw him as a rival. A competitor for my place with you. No way would I let him take your blood before I did. I didn't even think about dispersing the jutsu. He had to be shown that I was the dominant one, and once that instinct was triggered, I wasn't able to hold back. Before you did? Minato repeated. You were expecting to taste my blood at some point? Naruto hesitated, but nodded. I had hoped to, he whispered. It's the final bond. Final bond? When a gift is accepted, there is a bonding that takes place between the gift and the recipient. Connections related to the five senses are forged. The deepest and last one to form is the bond of taste. For me, that means tasting your blood. Minato narrowed his eyes a little. So, this connection has been made then? Naruto shook his head. Not really. The blood has to be fresh from the vein. Even the little time it spent out of your body was enough to dissipate some energy and make it too weak to form the bond. The young blonde paused. Don't worry. You have no obligation to me. Minato narrowed his eyes further at that statement, but only asked, what about the other bonds? In place. The first time I saw you, the first time I heard your voice, the first time I smelled your scent, and the first time I felt your touch. And you didn't think I should have been informed of these connections before they were made? Naruto flinched at the anger in his father's voice, but replied in the same dead tone. Forgive me, Hokage Yui. It is not usually done that way. All demons know what receiving a gift entails. I know you are not a demon, but I didn't know how else to go about it. His voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't see the harm in it. The first 4 connections only affect me. Only the final one would have had an effect on you. What effects do the bonds have? The Hokage sounded a little less angry. You will never be hidden from my sight. I will be able to hear your voice no matter what, and I will always obey it. I will always be able to track your scent. I will be able to sense your thoughts and feelings when you touch me, if you want me to. After the final bond, you would have had all those abilities too, as well as been able to sense my thoughts and feelings without needing to touch me. I guess that explains why you could track me so well, Minato muttered. Then he sighed. But what does that mean in practical terms? I'll never have any privacy? No, Hokage Yui. It means that no henge or disguise or clone will ever fool me. It means that if you call to me, I will hear you speak, even if you are on the other side of the world. Your scent cannot be hidden from me, even if you cross through water or it rains. And you can speak to me without words through touch if there is something important you want to say without anyone hearing it. And you would have been able to do all the same things with me, after the final bond. Except you wouldn't need to touch me to hear my thoughts and feelings, and you would be able to hear my speech without me calling you. You would be able to do those things anytime you wanted to. Minato shuddered a little. It sounded like Naruto was the one that wouldn't have any privacy. So, I could tell if you were plotting rebellion, huh? It had been a sarcastic remark, but Naruto didn't seem to pick up on that. Hi, Hokage Yui, among other things. Minato stared at him. He was doing a lot of that. And you're okay with that? He asked, anger once again seeping into his voice. You don't mind me just picking out your thoughts or listening to your conversations without your consent? Naruto looked up at him, surprise flickering briefly in his eyes before dying out again. Of course not, Hokage Yui. Why would I mind? I want to be of use to you. If you are bothering to listen to my thoughts or speech, it means that I have fulfilled my purpose. Nothing could be of greater importance to me. Minato exploded. It had been a long day, a very long day, and he couldn't take it anymore. Stop it. Just stop. He yelled at the boy. Naruto's eyes widened, but he made no other move. Stop talking like you are some object, some tool, some weapon for me to wield. You have your own life, your own soul. You are your own person. Humans are not. He stopped his rant abruptly, breathing hard. Naruto's face hadn't changed, but his eyes were suddenly and completely full of a deep, desperate pain, and Minato felt his gut twist with guilt. He had caused that pain, with his lost temper and stupid words. Naruto lowered his gaze. Humans, perhaps, are not tools. But I am a Hanyu, he said. As such, I am a tool. My mother created me specifically to serve you. She even made me to look like you. It is the purpose in my life. I want nothing more than to stay by your side and to be of use to you. That desire is a part of me and I cannot change it. I cannot bond with another. You are my home. I belong nowhere else. Minato watched the boy in front of him for a long moment. What if I don't want a tool for a son? He asked quietly. Naruto seemed to shrink in on himself. Then refuse the gift, he whispered. I don't know how to be anything else, but what I am. Minato said nothing. He stood there a moment longer, then turned to Jiraiya and plucked his coat off the man's shoulder, where it had been the whole time. He put it on, turned on his heel, and began walking out of the clearing. Jiraiya watched him go, but Naruto never lifted his eyes from the ground. When Minato reached the trees, he paused. I have to think about this, he said without turning his head. Stay here. I'll find you when I have made my decision. And he leapt into the trees. Chapter 5. Acceptance. Naruto blinked at the spot where his father had disappeared. Surely his decision had been made? But the way he phrased it, maybe there was still hope? No, it was foolish to think that way. His father had said it himself, he didn't want a tool for a son. Ironic that the thing Naruto had hoped would be his salvation turned out to be his damnation. He had spent his entire life trying to mold himself into a good warrior so his father would find him useful and want to keep him around. But that very thing was what the Hokage seemed to find so distasteful. He just wanted to serve his father. Why was that so wrong? He didn't understand. But it didn't matter. The Hokage would reject him. The bonds would be broken. He would be purposeless. Naruto sank back into the darkness of despair. Jiraiya watched his young student. He hadn't moved for the last hour, not since Minato had gone. The sun was sinking behind the trees, throwing long shadows across the clearing. The air was turning cool. The white-haired ninja walked towards the kneeling teen. The young man didn't look up from the ground, didn't turn. Naruto, Jiraiya said. No response. He sighed and squeezed the blonde's shoulder. It'll be all right, Naruto. Nothing. He laughed. He didn't think Naruto would notice. Minato was sitting on top of the Hokage monument. On top of the third's head, to be exact. He often came here to think. He liked the feeling of closeness to his predecessor it gave him. It was also a secluded place and had a wonderful view of the village. Sometimes he needed to be reminded why he did what he did. He dropped his head in his hands. Tonight, even that wasn't enough. He had stared out over the village until the sun had dipped below the horizon and the stars came out. The peace he usually felt in this place, the clarity that usually came to him, was missing. He had taken some pills for his headache, and that had dulled the pain but not gotten rid of it completely. The woman he loved had been a demon. That was fact number one he couldn't quite grasp. She had born or created, or whatever in hell you called it, a son. His son. Fact number two. Who was a 15-year-old half-demon whose only purpose in life was to serve him. Who saw himself as some sort of gift. Fact number three. And now Minato had a choice to make. Accept the gift or not. The very thought of letting Naruto bind himself to Minato, giving Minato a ridiculous amount of control over him, made the Hokage feel sick. He never wanted such power over another living being, half-demon or not. So, he was leaning towards not accepting. Really? A small, traitorous voice in the back of his head said. I'm not the tiniest bit excited to have such a gift literally laid at my feet. My ego wasn't stoked by the fact that a demon was so impressed with me, she gave me a son? He said I must be exceptional. He wouldn't throw Naruto out, though. Of course not. He could stay in the village. He could even be a ninja. Then Minato could try to break him of this ridiculous notion that he only existed to serve. He doesn't think it's ridiculous, he wants to serve me, why not give him what he wants? Don't all the other ninja in the village serve me too? On the other hand, he had the council and the people of the village to worry about. Konoha tended to be an open-minded place. It's why so many ninja clans with special abilities ended up here. They didn't face the same sort of fear and persecution they got in other parts of the world, Mist being a classic example. But there was a limit. Minato had no illusions on that score. If Naruto's heritage were ever discovered, there would be hell to pay. And he didn't think it would stay a secret forever. They could pass his power off as a Kekkai Genkai for only so long. What if he lost control again? Minato wasn't worried for himself, although his enemies would certainly make good use of the fact that he had slept with a demon if they ever found out about it. He was worried for Naruto. The council would most likely demand he be executed, or be banished at the very least. And while Minato could do, or not do, whatever he damn well pleased, a village divided was a village ripe for coups and civil war. He would never allow that to happen to the people he swore to protect. He might have to choose between his village and Naruto. And he knew what his decision would have to be. He's a powerful ninja, even at 15. Imagine what he'll be like in 10 years. Imagine what I could do with him. My enemies would never dare touch me, or my village. He could help me protect everyone. So maybe it was better if he didn't let Naruto stay. Jiraiya would need someone to take over the spy network eventually, after all. He could show Naruto the ropes. Then Naruto would still be a part of Konoha, but he wouldn't be in the village very much. I want to keep him near me. I've always wanted a son, even if he scares me. The secret of his heritage would stay safe that way. Was that the best way to protect him? I'm lonely. I'd be thrilled to have someone so totally devoted to me, who would never leave me. Minato groaned. He wasn't getting anywhere. He lifted his head and unzipped one of his vest pockets. He took out the object he had placed there earlier in the day. A Hittite on a piece of long, black cloth. He ran his fingers over the leaf symbol etched in the metal. He'd had Hisag get it made while he was in that meeting. He had planned on presenting it to Naruto after his test. Now he didn't know what to do with it. He sighed. I don't know what to do, he said aloud. Yes, you do, a voice replied. The yondaime turned. Jiraiya was standing, watching him. He turned back to gaze out over the village again. Everything was silent, save for the sound of the wind. You have to accept. Minato jerked his head around. What? That wasn't what he thought the Toad Sage would say. I can't do that. Why not? It's wrong. I'd be buying into that bullshit Kushina put in his head. I'd be taking his life away from him. Jiraiya shook his head. No, you'd be giving him his life. Minato blinked at his teacher. You saw him, before you left. I went back a little while ago. He hasn't moved. He didn't look at me, he didn't answer me when I spoke to him. I don't think he even noticed when I put his jacket on his shoulders. He was broken, lifeless. I think I know why. He has said it multiple times. His life, his purpose, is to be accepted by you. To serve you. He was excited to finally come here, to meet you. He was so sure he could impress you enough that you would accept him, despite what he is. But after he lost control, he thought that was it. Did you notice how he spoke, when he was answering your questions? He had hoped to make the final bond with you. Had that happened, you would have been able to do all those things he talked about. He phrased everything in the past tense. Like you had already rejected him. I truly believe he thinks he ruined his chances to gain your acceptance. If so, what is left for him? He believes he has no life, no purpose anymore. We both know what happens when a man has no purpose. But, he could find a new purpose, I could help. No, you couldn't. He has no other purpose. It's not something you can change. Minato shook his head. I don't understand that. You don't have to. It will make him happy. He wants this. Why are you so resistant? Just because we want something, that doesn't make it right, Minato said softly. Jiraiya paused. You want this too, he murmured. Minato looked away, out over the village again, although he didn't really see it this time. His fingers stroked the cool metal of the headband. Damn it, Minato, then just accept. Why are you pushing me like this? Minato yelled. Because I want to see my students happy. The big man yelled back. I know this will make Naruto happy. I know this will make you happy. You have always wanted a son. And don't think I don't know how lonely you are here. Minato didn't know what to say to that. He should have known his sensei would pick up on his feelings, even though he wasn't in Konoha that much. I can't protect him here. When it gets out what he is. Minato said. That's just an excuse. What better protection could he have than being bound to the commands of the Hokage? He can't do anything to harm the people of this village if you order him not to. Minato shuddered. I couldn't do something like that to him. I know you don't like it, but it will appease the council. They may not trust him, they may not like him, but they won't be able to complain that he is a threat. Minato hadn't thought of that. Would it work? It might. Those who break the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash, isn't that what Obito said? What about those who abandon their sons? Silence. It reminds me of Zabuza and Haku. That relationship is so twisted. Jiraiya shook his head. Your relationship is whatever the two of you want it to be. He's not a tool if you don't treat him like one, no matter what sort of bond you possess. This way, everyone is happy. Naruto sat in the clearing. The only movement he had made since his father left was to tilt his head back and gaze at the stars. He had always liked watching them. He wondered what it would be like to be one, hanging in the night sky, surrounded by brethren. If he was a star, though, he supposed he would be the evening star. The one that appeared low down on the horizon, away from all the other stars. It burned brightly, but didn't stay for long. His father told him to wait, so he was. But he didn't have any hope. He was only waiting to see what his father would do with his discarded gift. Even though, in the end, it didn't matter what the Hokage said. He knew what he would do. It wouldn't be long now, Naruto could sense him coming. He slowly reached behind him and pulled his katana out of its sheath, his jacket falling unnoticed from his shoulders. He held the sword for a moment in his hand, savoring its feel. Then he laid it carefully on the ground in front of him, blade pointing to his left. He was ready. He went back to watching the stars. Minato landed in the clearing, Jiraiya right behind him. He took a moment to survey the scene. Naruto was still kneeling in the exact same spot he had been when Minato had left. His katana was lying on the ground in front of him. He was staring at it. What the hell? Minato hissed lowly. Jiraiya just sighed. Again. Naruto looked like a condemned man prepared for seppuku. God damn it. Minato swore, stalking forward. Jiraiya followed at a safe distance behind him. This was really between the two of them anyway. Minato was angry, very angry. Mostly at himself for waiting so long, for putting his son through this. For not doing the right thing in the first place, but also at Kushina and Jiraiya, and a little bit at the boy in front of him. It may have been silly or unfair, but he had enough anger to go around, and he was a generous man by nature. He came right up to the teen, who was still looking at the ground. "Naruto, look at me," he snapped. When the younger blonde had complied, he continued. "What the hell is this?" Naruto blinked. "I don't understand, Hokage Yui." The formal title, delivered in such a dead tone, set Minato's teeth on edge. In one fluid movement he slid his foot under the sword, flicked the hilt end up and snatched it out of the air. "What the hell are you doing sitting here, looking like you're about to stick your katana through your gut?" Naruto blinked again, but answered. "Being prepared, Hokage Yui." "Prepared for what?" Minato growled. "Prepared for your decision. And you are so sure you know what it will be?" Naruto looked down again. "What else could it be?" he whispered. "I saw your face." Minato narrowed his eyes. "What about my face?" "You were afraid of me. I disgusted you." "Those feelings lead to hate." "They always do. And you don't just hate my demon half. You hate the fact that I want to serve you. I don't understand why it's so bad, but it is. And I can't change it. I can't change what I am, not even for you. So, there is nothing for me to do and no way I can make you want me." Naruto's voice was a whisper by the end of his speech. Minato's anger drained away and was replaced by profound sadness and pity. "Fear and disgust always lead to hate, huh?" "I take it you have experienced this firsthand," he said softly. What had happened in the 4 years his son was on his own? Naruto merely nodded. "Well, I ask that you not lump me in with the rest of those fools," Minato said. Naruto's head snapped up. "I do not hate you. I will never hate you. You are my son." Naruto's eyes were huge. Minato thought they might pop out of his head. He jabbed the sword in the ground and dropped to his knees in front of the teen. He pulled him into an embrace for the second time that day. "I love you," he whispered, willing Naruto to feel the truth of his words through his touch. He didn't really know how to control the power, but he hoped it would work. Naruto was stiff as a board, not believing it. But suddenly he gasped and clutched at Minato's back. He buried his face in his father's shoulder once again and sobbed. Minato stroked his back, trying to exude comforting feelings. "Let it out, Naruto," he murmured. "That's right, I'm here." When his son's sobs quieted, Minato leaned back a little, pushing Naruto gently away so he could see his face. Naruto wiped his eyes and his nose with one sleeve, sniffling a little, looking for all the world like an 8-year-old boy instead of a 15-year-old young man. He was smiling, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Minato smiled inwardly. What he was about to say would change that. "Naruto," he said gently, his hands on his son's shoulders. "You are the most beautiful, most wonderful, most exquisite gift anyone has ever given me." Minato thought Naruto's eyes couldn't be wider, but he had been wrong. They now opened to an impossible size. His smile vanished and he stared at his father with undisguised shock, his mouth hanging slightly open. "I am truly honored," Minato continued. "And I humbly accept it. I would be proud to have you by my side." Naruto made a strangled noise in his throat. It sounded like woo-woo-ha. He took a choking breath and tried again. "Wyaat?" There, at least that was somewhat recognizable. "You heard me. But, I thought T. You thought wrong." Silence. Naruto stared for a minute. "Ah, really? Why you accept me?" "Yes." More silence. Then, Yaiius. Naruto exploded. He leapt up from his kneeling position and punched his fist in the air. He twirled in place and jumped towards Jiraiya, who was shaking with laughter. "Erosenin, Erosenin!" he called. "I did it! I did it! I told you I'd do it!" He landed in front of the Toad Sage with the biggest smile Jiraiya had ever seen on his face. His sensei enveloped him in a hug and he hugged right back. Minato, watching from the ground, suppressed a pang of jealousy. I knew you would, Jiraiya said. And didn't I tell you he'd accept you? Yes, the young blonde replied, still grinning. But then he blinked his eyes and his grin faltered. He swayed on his feet. Aro Sennin? He murmured. I feel, kinda. He collapsed into the big man's chest. The white-haired ninja chuckled as he lowered Naruto to the ground. He laid his young student on his back and arranged his limbs in a comfortable position. Minato was by his side in an instant, his brow slightly furrowed. Too much emotion, the Toad Sage said. He's gone from the depths of despair to the pinnacle of happiness in a very short time. Not to mention the fact that he sat in one damn position for something like 3 hours. Minato's expression cleared at his sensei's explanation and he smiled. Yes, I'm surprised he could move at all. Adrenaline, I suppose. He's probably going to hurt like hell when he wakes up. Minato chuckled too. Probably. He moved towards Naruto's feet. Naruto became aware of amusement first. He was amused. Why? What was so funny? He thought he might open his eyes and find out. Before he could do that, however, he became aware of pain. Mostly in his legs. They were sore all over, but he also felt a flare of pain like tiny needles jabbing into his skin that was traveling down his left calf. He twitched and became aware of the fact that his head was resting on something that didn't feel like the ground and someone was stroking his hair. His headband was missing. He's coming around. The baritone voice was smooth and cool, like water over stones in a river. The sound set his bones to humming a little before the sensation faded away. His father. His eyes flew open. The Hokage was looking down at him, his face upside down, his lips stretched in an amused smile. Naruto blinked a few times. His father was amused too? Although, now that he thought about it, Naruto wasn't particularly amused. Not with the pain in his legs and the ache in his back. So then, why? It hit him. His father was amused. Naruto was feeling his father's emotions through his touch. The thought made him smile. Welcome back, Naruto, the Hokage said, still smiling. Naruto noticed the older blonde was sitting cross-legged on the ground and Naruto's head was resting in his lap on something soft, his jacket, probably. His father was the one touching his hair. Naruto's smile widened. He wanted to run and shout and dance all at the same time. He had never been so happy in his entire life. Ever. His father accepted him. His father wanted him. His father loved him. It was more than he had ever hoped for. He twitched again and Jiraiya's voice floated over to him. Oi! Keep still. I'm trying to work here. Naruto glanced down. His father's coat was spread across him, although it was folded up so his legs weren't covered. His feet were bare and his pants and protective mesh leggings had been rolled up to his knees. The Toad Sage was methodically massaging his calves. That's what the needling pain was. Naruto winced at a particularly acute jab. Sorry, Aro-sennin, he said, his voice scratchy. Yeah. Brat, the big man muttered. Naruto frowned. When are you going to stop calling me brat? He asked. When are you going to stop calling me Aro-sennin? The Hokage laughed at their banter, flooding Naruto with his amusement. My guess is, never. Naruto smiled. He couldn't help it. He was just too happy. The Toad Sage leaned back. I think that's good, he said. Try sitting up, Naruto. Naruto nodded. Thanks, sensei. He pushed on his elbows and struggled up, his father supporting his back. His hair, unbound by his headband, flopped in his face. Ugh, how are you feeling? The Hokage asked. Sore, Hokage-sama, Naruto replied. He examined his legs. He had angry red lines scored in his flesh above his ankles and below his toes from his sandals. He also had an interesting crisscross pattern impressed in the skin of his calves from the mesh leggings. Well, that's what he got for kneeling for 3 hours like an idiot. But, it was worth it. He broke out in a huge grin. But I don't really care about that. His father's laugh bubbled out again from behind him. Naruto loved that sound. No, I suppose you don't. His father paused. Speaking of which, Naruto did his best to turn and look at the Hokage, although all he really managed was turning his head and half-twisting his back. There is a final bond that needs to be made, right? Naruto blinked at him. Only if you are up to it, the Hokage rushed on. I don't really know what it entails, so I don't know if you need to wait, or... He was interrupted by a choked noise from Naruto that sounded suspiciously like a sob. The young blonde whipped his head back around, away from his father, trying desperately not to cry. Again. He'd already cried enough today. His hands clutched the Hokage's coat still in his lap. His father was by his side in an instant, looking worriedly into his face. Naruto, what's wrong? Is it what I said? We can wait, it doesn't have to be tonight. Naruto shook his head and tried to turn his face away, but his father wouldn't let him. The older ninja grabbed his chin in his hand and turned his son's head back towards him. Naruto, look at me. Naruto obeyed, lifting his eyes to his father's, inwardly cursing the few tears that had managed to leak out. He could feel the concern his father was feeling, and a hint of guilt that he may have hurt his son somehow. It just made Naruto want to cry more. What's wrong? And nothing, Hokage-sama. Then why are you crying? I'm not crying, Naruto replied. The Hokage cocked one eyebrow at him. I am just happy. Naruto exclaimed. I didn't know you could cry when you were happy. I've always wanted this, and I thought this would be the part you'd hate the most, and now you want to do it right away. He was babbling, and he knew it, but he just couldn't seem to stop. The Hokage was smiling. Okay, Naruto. I understand. He released his son's chin. So, you are okay to do this now? Naruto nodded, still trying to control his breathing. His hands played with the coat in his lap. What exactly do I have to do? You cut your thumb, like for summoning, Naruto explained, finally breathing normally. Then you smear some on my forehead, like this. He made a motion with his hand, a simple swipe, right to left, across his head. Then you give me your hand, and I take some. And that's it. Sounds simple enough. Will I feel anything? Naruto shrugged. I don't know. I will, and I think you might, but I don't know what. He paused, looking nervous. Also, I might, lose control again? Yeah, it's okay, Naruto. I know what to expect this time. Naruto smiled hesitantly. He said that, but what if? He shook himself. His father had agreed. There was no way to go but forward. Okay, Hokage-sama, are you ready? His father nodded. Naruto pulled his father's coat off his lap. He pulled his legs in so he was sitting cross-legged, wincing all the while. The Hokage moved around to face him, crossing his legs in a similar fashion. He was close enough that he was almost touching Naruto's knees with his own. Jiraiya had stood and moved back a couple paces to give them some space. Okay, Naruto whispered, taking a few deep breaths. The yondaime pulled a kunai out of his pouch and made a cut on his right thumb. The scent of his blood flooded the air and Naruto caught his breath. The Hokage brushed Naruto's blonde locks out of the way with his left hand and swiped his thumb across Naruto's forehead. It felt like fire. The instant it touched his skin, it burned, although it was a comforting heat instead of a painful one. He gasped, and the yondaime paused, a questioning look on his face. Naruto just nodded a little, signaling that he was all right, that the older man should continue. The Hokage lowered his hand and Naruto raised his own to grab it. It was shaking a little, but Naruto was pleased to see the nails were perfectly normal. He grasped his father's hand and brought the bleeding thumb slowly to his mouth. He parted his lips and licked the cut. It was perfect. It was the most delicious flavor, the most beautiful music. Everything else disappeared but the sound and the taste. He had thought it had been intense earlier, but that was nothing compared to this. Energy coursed through his body, he thought his heart might explode. His own blood sang with his father's, a perfect counterpoint. His heartbeat instantly matched with the rhythm provided by his father's heartbeat. He was lost in wave after wave of pure bliss. Perfect happiness. He could have been in that state forever, or for a second, when a discordant note sounded in the symphony and a slight bitterness appeared in the taste. He frowned. What was this feeling? Fear? And guilt? His eyes snapped open. He was looking at his father's face. The Hokage was crying, silent tears falling to land on Naruto's cheeks. Naruto realized he was lying on his back and his father was leaning over him, one hand resting on the ground near his head, the other clamped firmly between Naruto's teeth. He must have bit down at some point. He relaxed his jaw, releasing his father's hand. It hurt because his father winced slightly. But he made no sound. Naruto ran his tongue over his teeth and noticed they were sharper than they should have been, and not just his canines. He looked at the Hokage's hand. Instead of one small cut, he now had 2 puncture wounds on his thumb. Naruto hoped they didn't go all the way through. He pushed his instincts back, and watched as the claws holding his father's hand started to retreat. He removed his other hand from the Hokage's arm, which he had gripped sometime during the bonding, and waved his fingers over the wounds. The bleeding stopped instantly. He hesitated a moment, but then brought the thumb back to his mouth and licked the blood off. Why waste it? He didn't miss his father's flinch or the wave of guilt that followed it. He sighed. His loss of control must have been pretty spectacular. His father's blood was still the best thing he had ever had, but the reaction wasn't nearly as strong. He didn't think he would ever feel that wonderful again. He sighed again and released his father's hand. At least he'd gotten to feel it once. He started to sit up. "I'm sorry, Naruto," his father murmured as he moved back, giving his son space. He wiped his eyes quickly. "Why?" the young blonde asked, confused. The Hokage shook his head. "You were so happy, and I ruined it." Naruto blinked. "What?" "I could feel your happiness. It was incredible. It was the most amazing thing I've ever felt. And I could hear something, it was beautiful. And I wanted you to stay there, in that place, for as long as you wanted. But, He trailed off. "I was still aware of what was going on here, and you were leaking that feeling, like earlier. Only it was worse. I was trying so hard not to be afraid, not to let it through to you, but I failed. And that brought you back." "I'm sorry." Naruto smiled. "You don't need to apologize, Hokage-sama. Jiraiya-sensei says that in order to be better people, we have to face our fear. And you did, and I'm sure that, eventually, you won't be afraid anymore." Minato stared at his son, surprised by his words. But Naruto didn't give him time to reply. "Anyway, I am happy I got to feel it at all. And I'm happy you got to feel it too. And hear the music. Isn't it wonderful? That's the song your blood sings." Well, this time, it was the song our blood sang together. Minato blinked a few times. "You hear that when you taste my blood?" Naruto nodded. "Wow." Naruto grinned. But then he frowned. "What happened? How long was I out of it?" Jiraiya spoke up. "It was only a minute or two, Naruto. Just after you licked Minato's finger, you lost it, and fell backwards. You even started leaking a little chakra." "Really?" Naruto questioned. He shuddered a little. It had been bad then. He was glad it was just a little chakra. Too much and, well, the situation would have been worse. Jiraiya nodded. "It was only some small wisps. Anyway, you were like that for just a bit, and then you woke up." "Naruto, something happened to your forehead," the Hokage said. "The blood I smeared there seemed to sink into your skin, and then a seal appeared." "Do you know what that's about?" Naruto shook his head. "No, but I guess it has something to do with the ability to sense thoughts and emotions." "Is it still there?" The yondaime shook his head. "No, it faded. I'd like to see if we can make it reappear though. I'm interested in it." Naruto grinned. "Right, you're a seal master. If you like, I can show you the seals on my soul too." Minato stared. "What? Seals on your soul?" Naruto nodded. "Yeah, Okasama made them." Sure, Naruto. I'd like to see that sometime," the older blonde stuttered. His son just kept surprising him. "But right now, I don't think I can handle it. I feel like I've been run over by a ninja platoon." Minato got wearily to his feet and pulled Naruto up after him. He rubbed his eyes. His headache was back with a vengeance. "All right, Mosuko," Naruto gasped and smiled brilliantly at the word, but didn't say anything. "We are bonded completely, right?" There are no other steps to accepting you? No, Hokage-sama, that was the final bond. All the steps are completed. Good. Naruto grinned and scratched the back of his head. Ano, Hokage-sama, do you know where my headband is? It's just my hair gets in my eyes without it, and it's kind of hard to run like that. The yondaime chuckled. I have the same problem, he said, gesturing to his own unruly spikes. And I have your headband right here. He reached into one of his vest pockets and pulled out, not Naruto's plain black band, but a leaf Hittite. Naruto sucked in his breath. It was the symbol of a Konoha nin. His father was making him a ninja under his command. It was everything he'd ever wanted. Uzumaki Naruto, his father said, in a serious voice. Naruto straightened his shoulders and bowed, his own face totally serious. Hi, Yondaime Hokage-sama. I am accepting you into the ranks of Konoha nin, level Chunin. The yondaime stepped forward and tied the headband around Naruto's forehead. Congratulations. Arigato, Hokage-sama, Naruto said, with another bow. When he straightened, he found himself being hugged by his father. I'm so proud of you, Masuko, the older man murmured. Naruto merely squeezed his father back. His smile could outshine the sun. The Hokage released him and stepped back. He walked to where his coat was lying, picked it up, shook it out, and put it on. Now, it's been an extremely long day. I have a headache the size of Fire Country, and I desperately want to sleep. So, I suggest we head back. Don't forget your jacket, Naruto. Hi, Hokage-sama. Naruto called. He bent to pick his jacket up from the ground where it had fallen from his father's lap. Then he made his way to where his katana was stuck in the earth. He plucked it out and slid it smoothly into the sheath strapped to his back. He put his jacket on and zipped it up. It was black with an orange lining and a high, ribbed collar. An orange swirl that ended in a leaping flame on the back was its only decoration. He was just turning to where his father and the toad sage waited when something silver caught his eye. It was the bell. He grinned and swiped it up off the ground, then ran to join the two men. In the mountains to the west of the village hidden in leaves, in the gardens of a relatively small but richly furnished traditional house, a dark-haired teen paused in his training. It was dark, but he wanted to finish this last set of katana forms before turning in for the night. He dropped his stance and pressed his free hand into his stomach. A deep rumble was emanating from there and it echoed in his head. What was that damn fox up to now? He didn't think it was an angry growl, not like the Kyuubi usually made. And that threatening, fear-inducing feeling he usually had when the fox acted up wasn't there either. Instead, it was more of an amused feeling. Amused? The fox was amused? Was he laughing? Is something wrong, Sasuke? A voice called from the direction of the house. The teen shook his head. No, nothing, Onie-san, he replied, getting back into his stance. I'll be done in a moment. A pause. Don't let your tea get cold. Hi, Onie-san. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfiction. Looking forward to having you on board again.